For the 70th race in the history of Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS Endurance Cup, we are at a new venue for the championship. We are in Saudi Arabia, we're in Jeddah. Welcome everybody to the free practice session for the GT3 cars in anticipation of tomorrow's 6-hour season finale with, of course, championships on the line through the bronze, gold, silver categories and overall as well, in which 11 crews mathematically are in with a chance of winning the championship outright. It's going to look rather different when we go racing because we'll be heading into the darkness, although it's a very well floodlit circuit. But right now there is barely a cloud in the sky, a little bit of a breeze, lots of sun, it's very hot, and we have 2 hours to drool over GT cars at a really impressive new venue. The entry this weekend, 48 cars. We reckon we might be down to 47 after the rigours of the test sessions yesterday. The fast lane is open, the cars making their way in some respects down to the end of the pit road ready to go out on track, in others getting themselves in the sort of herringbone formation, which is how the cars must be in the pit lane at 45 degrees. Then they go into the fast lane and make their way down to pit out. David Addison and John Watson are trackside, and Watty, what a track this is.
Take your breath away. It is an absolutely sensational racetrack. One of the longest in the calendar, 6.1 kilometers around, 3.8 miles, 27 corners. Third longest circuit in the motorsport calendar after Spa and Las Vegas. And when this circuit was created, Ross Brawn, who was a part of the design team, his image of this racetrack was to make it a race circuit, not just a street circuit. Some people say this is the fastest street circuit in the world. I think others would say it's a road circuit, but it is, in terms of its character, very much that of a street circuit because of the close proximity of the barriers around the racetrack to the racetrack. In some places, in fact, it forms the, if you like, the apex of a corner. But fabulous circuit, really, really quick. And just coming down into turns 1 and 2, which will always be a controversial part of any racetrack at the start of an event, or when you've got drivers fighting for position.
There are sections of the circuit where it is very narrow and it feels even narrower because of the concrete. There are other sections where, there's an example, there are runoff areas, so we are getting track limit warnings and track limits affecting lap times that are in turn cancelled. So it's one of those strange sort of a circuit. There are bits that give you that feeling of freedom. There's another example. There are bits on the other side of the hairpin that feel very narrow indeed. 27 corners in all right, some might be just a little bit of a kink. That's turn 11, which really is the line out of turn 10 up the curb and back onto turn 12.
Yeah, track limits are going to be penalised, but in essence, sector 1, the circuit, this is coming to the conclusion of sector 1 into turn 13. So we're going to see the early first sector being principally about downforce and the other two sectors being a little bit less about downforce, more about top speed.
We've gone full course yellow, which I think is more of a test than because of an incident, just to get the marshals, the race control team and the drivers all used to the flow of how full course yellow is going to be employed around the circuit. The cars go at the delta speed, and when the race director Niels Vitic is happy, he'll give the call that we can go back to green. He did say in the briefing yesterday that he'd do that early, and then that's out of the way. It's sort of a to-do list tick, right? We've tried the full course yellow process, now we can go for the rest of the session.
Right, let me start again. A full course yellow interrupted just when I was in full flow. Right, okay, sectors 1 fundamentally is the downforce part of the racetrack. Sectors 2 and sectors 3 are more about gaining the maximum top speed. But from what I understand from speaking to some of the engineers in the pit lane, is that the time that you will make up in sector 1 is greater than the time you will lose in sectors 2 and sector 3. And then, of course, you've got to deal with overtaking and racing. So if you've got a slightly higher downforce car, you will be quick through sector 1, but it's hard to overtake through sector 1. Maybe down into turn 13, it might be possible. That's the bank corner that then sort of effectively brings you back towards the most distant point, turn 27. So it's a big deal for the engineers to work out whether they go for the low downforce setup and live with a difficult car maybe through sector 1, but think they're going to gain, or you go for the high downforce, give the driver an easier time, less chance of making an error with downforce. Great challenge for both the teams, the engineers, and the drivers.
There is one of the Comp2 Aston Martins heading down the pit lane. And it looks like it's 007 Marco Sorensen at the wheel. Now we've lost, have we not, a Valkenhorst Aston Martin as well after yesterday's test.
Yes, that car had some damage and it wasn't repairable. But likewise, Come To You lost one of their cars. Their number 21 suffered enough damage that it couldn't be repaired. But they had the number 11 car, which was just here as a part of the package coming from Barcelona. So that car has been morphed into the 21. So in effect, the 21 is racing, but it is the effective number car 11 that would have been used in previous endurance events. Extra headlights on that AF Corsa Ferrari, I noticed they're just coming down. So some cars have actually taken what you might call the Spa front end, the nose, with the extra headlights inserted into the front of the nose, just to give them that additional vision at night time. Remember we saw at Spa the way that Ferrari had some of their additional lights pointing out towards the apex of corners. That's, I think, what AF Corsa have brought here. But at night time, or when we call it night time, the illumination is so powerful that actually it's just like a dull day. And coming into Jeddah Airport on, what was it, early hours of Wednesday morning, the circuit could be seen from the aircraft, and it was stood out like a sword. It was illuminated. I mean, just amazing. Just, look, there's the circuit. Look at it. It looks great.
What's not looking great, number 7 Aston going straight into its pit box, into the garage at the end of an outlap. That was Marco Sorensen at the wheel. Number 99 here is Riccardo Fella. Now this Audi was really rapid yesterday in the test, so it could be one to watch. John's been talking about, if you like, the Spa front end on cars. You'll also, for 1 or 2, see the old traditional back end. Certainly some of the Porsches yesterday were running with lots of sticky tape across the rear window to get rid of some of the glare when the headlights appear behind the driver. So we've got 1 or 2 drivers having a finger wag from race control about speeding in the pit lane. This session, free practice, not necessarily about chasing the time. It is about learning the track. It is about setup. And there you've got Riccardo Fella, number 99, having done the absolute best in the first sector. Now that's the hairpin at turn 13, which you kind of think is the halfway point of the lap, but actually there's more of a lap after the hairpin than before it. 6 kilometres, 6 and a bit. There are 2.3 kilometres down as you get up towards the hairpin. You can tell I ran around here, can't you? And then the rest of the lap is the other side. So there's more on this section than on the other side. Now, before we go much further, let's just head to the pit lane. Antonio Rankin is down there and has news.
Yeah, having spoke to the drivers of car number 99, they seem to fancy their chances for a podium this weekend. Obviously, they are still technically in the running for a championship, but don't think they'll quite be able to make that jump. They said they're not quite sure how the R8's going to perform around here, so let's see in this session.
Starting off all right, but there is a long way to go, and we know John the Audi's a turnkey racer.
Well, also, coming back from the TV compound, which is on the other side of the track from the pit lane, coming down the access bridge, I stopped and watched. And what stood out to me was the straight line speed of Audis compared to the other competitors. I went and asked some teams that, why does that car, is it something wrong? I know I might be getting old. Don't go talk about ageism, please. And they said, no, what the Audi has got, they've got a little bit of extra, I think, oomph here this weekend.
Right.
And what it gives them the opportunity is get off a corner. Their acceleration is better than some of the competitors. Now, the competitors might get to a similar top speed at the end of, for example, into turn 1 and 2. But the fact is, the Audi gets that initial jump off turn 27, and that is an advantage. So it stood out to me, and I thought maybe it was just an illusion, but it is actually the case.
Now that's 007, which looks like it's having brakes worked on or changed, discs. I thought I saw there being affected at the rear of the car. So 007 into its garage.
I mean, this is not a high brake circuit, in my opinion.
No.
I mean, there are braking loads. I mean, certainly into turn 1 and 2, that's a fairly big brake. And then more all the way down to turn 13. It's more about balancing the car on the throttle rather than being off and on the brakes. Then there's another brake into turn 13. But because 13 is a banked corner, there's a lot of assist from the racetrack. So it's not a stand on the nose and shudder into the corner. And then the next big break is at the end of the lap at turn 27.
Another car that's going to be worth watching is the McLaren. Tom Gamble at the wheel of one of the 3 Garage 59 entries this weekend. Number 159, Tom McLaren, factory driver. Not been a bad year for the Gambles, because younger brother Harry has started winning races in Ginetta. Brother George has won Porsche Carrera Cup GB. So Tom needs a win this weekend, doesn't he, or a good result, just to sort of complete the set. and the Gulf livery McLaren coming up to the hairpin.
Well, it's in this sector that people, again, the pit lane chatter. They think that the McLaren has got a really, really strong front end, which is what you really want coming into that long sector 1. Around other parts of the circuit, then maybe other configurations, the layout of the engine, vis-a-vis the front or the rear or the middle of the car. But sector 1 is an area where they think McLaren will shine, and what it'll do in the remainder of the lap or lap time is hard to tell. Just looking at the fastest lap, we've got Ricardo Feller doing a 2:0.490. We see the fuzzy timing and scoring on our screen. The best we saw last night was from Thomas Drouet in the Button BDS Mercedes. He did a 1:59.4, but that was on much cooler conditions.
And when we go racing, it's going to be 5 o'clock. Well, we're about 20 to 4 local time. So these probably the hottest conditions they'll have to worry about, because it's going to be qualifying. Oh no, maybe qualifying tomorrow. In fact, it might be fractionally hotter. It'll be earlier on in the day for that session. But Tom Gamble then looking decent here with personal bests. And as John rightly says, Ricardo Feller the fastest from Gilles Magnus now. It's an Audi 1-2. Different teams running them.
Isn't that funny? Isn't it funny? I spotted something last night, and there we are. We've got 2 Audis, first and second.
He's on the money, and another one 7th and another one 9th. Tom Gamble, anyway, over the timing line, and didn't get up with them. Number 8 Ferrari rattling its way over the curb. There, number 911 Porsche. What else? Klaus Bachler at the wheel of the pure racing car. For some drivers, pretty busy 3 weeks, because there is the opening round of Asian Le Mans in Malaysia next week. Some of them are in that, and then there's the Gulf 12 Hours in Abu Dhabi. Not a round of Intercontinental GT Challenge this year, just a one-off race, but some of these drivers are going to be in that as well. So the season continues apace for many. And Ricardo Feller the fastest then, and the margin is 41 thousandths of a second. It's pretty competitive up front.
Through sector 1, you can see it is difficult for a driver. A lot of these corners you can't see through the corner. You're really driving blind into the following corner. It's about being committed. It's about being also, to some degree, maybe being courageous or brave. And as long as you've got a car that is a part of you, in other words, it's not a snappy, oversteery, unpredictable car, that is a sensational part of the racetrack for any race driver to drive through. And just we got a glimpse of the Red Sea. We are by the seaside here in Jeddah.
And there are plenty of people further up the Corniche with their fishing rods. What they catch, we're not quite sure yet.
I mean, if we ever came back here, well, let's not go there. But I would certainly bring my fishing rod with me.
Indeed.
Ooh!
Errant Ferrari getting in the way of Klaus Bachler.
Yeah, the back snap, he's just sliding around under par. And this is now the long run back down to the final corner into turn 27.
Now, there are a couple of bits on this circuit. You drove it at speed the other day in a road car, not a GT3 car, admittedly, but you were saying what an impressive circuit it was. But there are a couple of sections on this element, if you like, the post-hairpin section of the track that come up on you pretty suddenly.
Yeah, particularly into turn 22. You come from a quick section of circuit, and then all of a sudden you realize you've almost gone a bit too quick. So turn 22 particularly caught my attention, and then 2 turns later, turn 24, which isn't quite as sort of eye-catching as 22. But look, everybody's adapted to it. They've been out last night and yesterday. They've done quite a number of laps. So the brain, if you like, has been programmed to enable them to adjust to 22 and 24, those 2 corners.
Now, Mauro Engel was up to second fastest as number 51 Ferrari hustles on, that being the car of David Rigon. And David Rigon is wide-ish at turn 10, but that's kind of the racing line going through turn 11. And drama there for the Mustang. Now, that's 64, which has come in with a broken left rear corner, or either a broken rear corner or the wheel's not been attached.
Well, we spoke to the guys from Multimatic who run the Ford Mustang program, and I heard we're going to put a load of tow out into the rear of the car to help the car rotate and turn. I can't believe that's the cause of why that issue would be pushing the Mustang back into the garage. So we've got, this is the run back now down to turn 27. There's the revised, I call it the Spa 24 Ferrari nose. So when we get into night time, hopefully we'll get views of the AF Corsa Ferraris. We'll see the way that they are able to use those additional headlights, or lights, not headlights, to give a sort of a 45-degree spread it enables the drivers to pick up much more accurately where the apex of a corner is, but in particular going through sector 1 where you're really using the curbing on the inside of a corner on the apex. You've got to get that spot on.
Well, David Rigon is good in sector 1 and a bit down in sector 2. Makes that run up now towards the timing line, past the high rises, some built, some in build. This is an area where construction is key at the moment because it is the coming part of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Jeddah Corniche. Not only in terms of business, but tourism as well. 10th fastest then is the Ferrari number 51. Davide Rigon improving that time through. Now there, for Comte is number 12. Back on the pit apron, that is the car of Nicolas Bart, Sebastian Nogard and Mathis Lismont. 007 is on track as well. The car that won the crowd strike 24 hours of Spa. Marco Sorensen still behind the wheel.
Yes, we saw that car in after a lap, and discs were removed. Now, I can't believe they were bedding discs in. I mean, normally one lap would not be sufficient, but they took off some of the discs, particularly the rear ones we saw. The car is now back on track, and so just climbing the curbs, and some cars will climb those curbs in a more comfortable fashion. Aston looks pretty good over them, I have to say. The other thing, David, we noticed when we were doing our laps, and let's give it the commercial, the BMW X5 automatic, was the surface is billiard table smooth.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So Sorensen on his first proper lap, slightly late into the session. Maxi Goetz also hasn't done a time. He's done an installation lap and come back in again. And there Sorensen runs off the road. Track limits will be, of course, carefully policed as ever. And the drivers losing a time because of track limits. It's quite a long one. And actually, there's a really surprising number of people being done for speeding in the pit lane early on in this session as well.
I mean, I don't know what the excuses are. I mean, everybody's got their speed limits pre-programmed. You just push a button and it should stick to it. But I mean, if you're a 0.1 of a mile an hour above it, you know, the beak comes down and slaps you on the wrist and gives you a nice big fine.
So, Audi, Mercedes, AMG from Audi, and Audi. Ricardo Feller from Maro Engel, Gilles Magnus third, Ezekiel Perez Companc, who is not a mad panda, as it were, this weekend, but he's part of the Santalot squad. He's fourth. A rather smoky Ferrari engine bay.
That's
there.
a smoky turbo, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a look in the engine bay. I mean, it is a work of art in there. The engine is so embedded, it's so deep into the chassis. I mean, the engineers can barely reach it because the size of these cars. To lean over that wing and get your hands down, you need arms about double the length to get to some of the components.
That's Maro Engel, fastest, going over the timing line, so dislodging the Audi monopoly. You might notice there's a rather different front right corner in the livery from the left, and that's because Lucas Auer put it in the wall yesterday, and a lot of work was done overnight.
In fairness to Lucas Auer, I don't think it was his fault. I think there was a technical problem, and the consequence was that car had an impact at a point which probably caught Lucas Auer's attention. Anyway, the engineers have got the car running again, and they may have a bit of graphic material to stick onto that wing.
Yeah.
Because these cars are not sprayed. It's just a series of different, very clever graphics that get attached or adhered to the cars.
So that's the Winward Racing team operating that, the Russell Ward American squad that's come to Europe, and of course Sprint Cup champions for the drivers, Engel and Auer this year. Maro Engel coming here as the FIA GT World Cup winner on the streets of Macau. If you didn't see it, it's quite a race, the main race that decided who was going to be the FIA GT World Cup winner. And there he is, coming now parallel to the red seat, right up against the concrete.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see momentarily as Maro Engel probably was going through turns 23, 24, 25 onto this back straight, how close he's getting the Mercedes to the wall on the inside. And well, in fact, I was earlier in that, I beg your pardon. So this is now on this. This is now on that run down into turn 27. So you have to get close to the wall. That's where the time is going to be. One thing doing an open wheel single seater, where you've got much more visibility of where your wheel is precisely. In an enclosed car, and these are physically large cars. There's no mechanism to tell you how close you are. It's just your seat of the pants instinct, or you hear the grind as the car rubs itself against the barriers.
Well, into the pit lane comes Mauro Engel, and that means that either Daniel Morad or Lucas Al will take it over. 51, Davide Rigon's car into the box. That was the smoky one, was it not? So in is 51. And 71, Thomas Neubauer clambering the curb, coming up through turns 1 and 2.
What we haven't really seen so far is what we're maybe going to get a glimpse of now, is a group of cars getting together and seeing how they manage traffic. Because again, going through, I can see the Ferrari is anxious to get ahead of the Aston Martin, but where is he going to do it? There's nowhere in this early part. This is going through sort of turn 7, 8, 9 and into 10. And then the run from 10 through 11, that little kink at 11 is not really a corner. So the Aston pulls over to the left and lets the Audi and the Ferrari drive through into turn 13. And there you can see that it's not a big degree of banking, but it does assist, especially if you've got a car that maybe doesn't have quite the front bite, because maybe your tires are worn, or maybe your tires are not up to temperature, or you haven't got the car balance correct. But that bank turn is an assist to pretty much everybody in the field.
Well, right now we have the top two in the pit lane, and up to third, Lamborghini, Marco Mappelli, the redoubtable and very experienced Marco Mappelli, one-time Australian Formula 3 champion. He's gone third in number 163 Lamborghini from Gio Magnus from Ezekiel Perez Compact, and then another of the Lamborghinis, sixth, number 63 of Matteo Cairoli.
Yeah, I mean, what you've got in the top 5 are 4 cars powered by, which is in effect the Audi V10 motor. It's badged a Lamborghini engine, but it's part of VW Audi Group owned Lamborghini, so it is in effect the same engine that's in the Audi, again, it must be in part that those cars are pretty effective on the straight bits of the racetrack. Forget about what it's like around the rest of the circuit.
Should I be getting worried, do you think, about number 9, Maxi Goetz, Boots and VDS Mercedes that hasn't yet done a lap, or Lorcan Hannafin's Valkenhorst Aston Martin? They've been out, they've had a look and come back in, but now they have been in the pit lane for 6.5 minutes in the case of Goetz, and getting on for 3.5 minutes in the case of Hannafin.
In the case of Goetz, yes, I would be concerned, because that's a quick car, we know that. The Aston Martin of Lorcan Hannafin is not likely to be challenging at the very front. As you see, Mauro Engel, Lucas Auer and Daniel Morad, that's a car which is currently quickest overall. It's quickest overall by just over 0.2 of a second. Still hasn't broken the 122nd lap time barrier, but not a million miles away, and I would imagine that the teams are running tires which they would have run yesterday in the sessions that they had available to them.
Well, we know Mauro Engel is quick because he's the fastest in the session, but he was too quick in the pit lane by 0.1 of a kilometre an hour.
Well, there you go.
Number 2, Fabian Schiller at the wheel of the Mercedes, another quick driver in the Get Speed car. That's the entry that he shares with Jules Gounon and Luca Stolz. Mercedes veterans all now. And number 2, Mercedes, currently 6th fastest, Fabian Schiller having improved last time around. Lucas Auer takes over from Mauro Engel, so it's his turn in number 48. As up the curb at 11, there goes Fabian Schiller. The Ford that we saw with its slightly wonky rear wheel, Christopher Mies, that car's gone back out again and lapped quicker last time to be 32nd, the one Ford in the race. We've got Fords in GT4 as well as GT3 here this weekend. And Fabian Schiller is absolutely on the money, isn't it? The car way up near the wall coming out of the hairpin there.
Yes, I think if you're going to go for a team, but watch how close he gets to the wall there. I mean, barely you get a cigarette package between the car and the wall. And we saw Mauro Engel doing it when he was behind the wheel. It takes commitment to do that. And he's caught up to the tail of the Porsche. So he's going to be stuck there. There's no likelihood. Oh, he's taken the opportunity. That's courageous. That's into turn 22.
Yeah.
And you can see there he overran on the exit, but that's because he took that very narrow, tight entry. He didn't have much option. So that was a courageous place to make a pass. But it proves with cooperation, you can make a pass into turn 22.
Got the job done, didn't he? Getting ahead of Klaus Bacher then in the Porsche, who I think is on a fairly gentle lap anyway. Now, number 12, which is the Nicolas Bart, Sebastian Neugaard, Mathis Lismont Aston, is on its last warning for track limits. Nicolas Bart is at the wheel of it at the moment. We've had about 25 minutes of the session, and he's used up all of the goodwill in race control.
Car has he been in the car for the entirety of the session?
Fair point, not
so
sure.
As the car gets the penalty, so you could be the innocent party, and then you one cops the penalty.
Valentino Rossi, we haven't even touched on him yet, but he's here, he's back in GT World Challenge Europe, deciding which way he's going to lean next year. Wants to do a little bit less racing, have a little bit more time at home, but he's been a winner, of course, at Misano again in the GT3 only championship this year in the Sprint Cup. Ross Gunn here in another of the Valkenhorst Aston Martins, and number 34 Ross Gunn up now, back onto the power.
And just going back to Valentino Rossi, currently only 42nd out of the 45 cars that have actually recorded a meaningful lap. So either Valentino's got an issue and he's talking to the engineers, or he's just taking it, in a way which is maybe a very Valentino way, just get there at his own pace.
Yeah, 32 BMW, in fact. Sheldon van der Linde in the other, you might call it the favoured WRT entry. That's currently only, well, it was about 40th. It has now moved up to 27th. But yeah, they're getting on with their own run plan, aren't they here? They don't have to go and nail the time early on. They can work on what they need to.
Well, I can tell you the commitment that those three drivers have to the team is so great that they were able to take the morning off and go and play golf, which is what they were doing this morning, and they sort of wandered in to the BMW hospitality just behind the pits about an hour and a bit ago.
How laid back can you be? It's a strange timetable here, with nothing really happening until after lunch, about 2 o'clock. The track activity got underway today, and yes, even round about 1 o'clock, drivers strolling in, looking ever so casual, had the morning to themselves, arrive, and all of a sudden throw themselves into race mode. So the paddock was pretty quiet this morning, although the GT4 teams were perhaps a little bit more eager.
Not like you, David. I had to put a bridle on you this morning to stop you from going in at about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Never been at the circuit so late, getting here about 11:15. Ross Gunn up towards the line. And as he goes by, let's see what that does. Puts him 25th, or he is 25th, yeah. Moves him up, but again, this session is not about chasing a time. It is free practice. Run old tyres if you want, work on setup if you want, put your amateur driver in, let him have the mileage and get the confidence if you want, try different things on setup. It is there for the teams to exploit the 2 hours of running that they have.
Yes, and I mean, we're coming up to now 4 o'clock. It gets dark, or it begins to get dark around about 20 to 6 or so in the evening. Just looking at the various notes that we were given, which makes it much easier to understand what goes on here at night time. But yes, it starts to get dark, or they say dusk, at about 20 to 6 in the evening. So again, that's just another part of the procedure that teams will go through. It's of no consequence in terms of overall performance. Watching behind one of the cars following the BMW running by, there it is.
60.
That was the Ferrari, Rinaldi Ferrari, I think.
Yeah, sorry, 66 Audi has been given a stop and go penalty of 10 minutes for excessive track limit abuses.
So most of the track limits are coming out, well, a lot of them are turn 11, some at turn 22. Turn 4 was a favourite yesterday. So it's 11 and 22 seem to be the two corners. 22 is one of the corners I picked out. We saw when Klaus Bachler made that dive, or sorry, it was the 48 Mercedes down the inside of the Porsche. The consequence of doing that was you can't pinch the car tight enough to avoid running over the curbing on the outside. That's undoubtedly where one of those penalties would have been accrued.
Now that is the car that leads the Bronze Cup in the championship in endurance, but has yet to win a race this year. The Jonathan Hui Eddie Cheever Ferrari comes out of the Sky Tempesta Racing stable with
Chris Froggatt as
Chris
well.
Froggatt, the third driver, and the combination has been solid, reliable, good. There they are, leading on points, but they'd quite like not only to win the championship, but they'd like a race win, or a class win within the race this weekend. Dominic Baumann here in treble 7, down in 41st currently in the Mercedes.
So just coming out of turn 13, then through the flat out 14, then the little kink 15 into the much tighter turn 16, and then 17. So again, it's this flirtation with the barriers, literally you can see the green-white lines, which sort of effectively your track limits. But as long as 2 of your wheels are still on the black stuff, then that will not be a track limit abuse. Into turn 22 now, and you see how tight it is there. It's so easy to run all 4 wheels over the black on the darker tarmac, which is a track limit abuse.
Baumann should be on for an improvement on this lap, and there's a quick BMW there behind as well, but Dominic Baumann, let's just get him across the line because he's coming out of turn 27, or will be out of turn 27 in a moment, up towards the line, round the back of the paddock. Looks narrow there, but it's this long drag. Road starts to open up a little bit. The pit lane line is going to be where Baumann goes, so 2 personal bests, but then he aborts the lap. Just going back to the circuit for a moment, okay, we're looking now at daylight, bright sunshine. Before much longer, 5 o'clock, by the time this session gets to an end, we're going to be thinking about the fading light, and for the teams later on in the pre-qualifying session, all the reference points that they had here are going to be completely different because they're going to be racing, or driving rather, in the darkness. I know it's well floodlit, but it's going to be different. Except
for the Ferrari AF Corsa drivers who've got those, you can see there in the Sky Tempesta, that's an AF Corsa run car.
Yeah.
And they've got what I call the Spa nose. So those lights will veer at about 45 degrees, which will give every of the drivers in the 4 AF Corsa entered Ferraris much easier vision, or the ability to place that car. And that's what happens, a car, the Mustang, coming out of the pit lane as the Ferrari goes onto a flying lap, and that's sort of unsettled whoever's behind the wheel of the Sky Tempesta Ferrari right now. He's looking at hand in the cockpit, get out of the way! And that's the pit lane exit.
Yeah, Chris Froggatt in the Ferrari, Christopher Mies in the Mustang. So Chris Froggatt has to sort of forget about that Mustang, drive his own lap here. Christopher Mies, who is lower down in the times than is the Ferrari, pressing on. It's taken us a full season, of course, to get used to Christopher Mies and a different brand, not Audi in that sentence, but he's gone well in the Ford when we've seen him in endurance this year.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed the Ford Mustang joining in, partly because it's a new brand, but also the company, Canadian company Multimatic, have done the engineering on behalf of the Ford Mustang brand as well to produce a stellar race car. Now, it's physically a large car. It's probably a little bit higher than some of those other competitors around it, so maybe its center of gravity is a little bit higher. But listen, it's a work in progress. But the key to the Mustang is it is glorious sounding. I love it. I said, has it got a roar around this racetrack? I said, no, we haven't got the straight pipes on here. Oh, well, anyway, it still sounds magnificent.
Absolutely so. And it gets better and better all the time. Christopher Mies, one of those drivers for Proton competition, along with Frederick Verviche and Ben Barker this weekend, replacing Dennis Olsen. Thank you.
Do you know why?
Go on.
Dennis Olsen and his wife or partner are having or expecting a child.
Ah, okay.
And that's a very good reason to say, look, I'm sorry, I've put my life and my family ahead of my profession.
So Ben Barker jumps at the chance. Has to fold himself into that car, I should think, because Christopher Mies and Fred Verviche aren't anywhere near as tall as Ben Barker. Very few people are, but Ben, very quick, very underrated British driver. He will be on track soon. Chris Froggatt there in the Sky Tempesta Ferrari then. Bronze Cup Championship leader in endurance. Remember, they're within GT World Challenge Europe. There is sprint, there is endurance, and there is overall. We've had the sprint championship decided. Endurance and therefore overall, with the two merged, will be decided this weekend. There's your Mustang.
Yeah, there's another issue I saw on the side of the Mustang, just behind the C-pillar, just behind the door. There's a lovely sticker as acknowledgement and recognition to the late, great Parnelli Jones, one of the America's legend race drivers, both in IndyCar racing and off-road, desert raids, Trans Am, whatever. And because of that association with the Ford brand, on either side there's a lovely, it's only a little small 3-inch diameter sticker, but Parnelli, I think it's Parnelli Rufus Jones.
Okay.
I met him a couple of times, fearsome on the racetrack, but delightful and charming on the golf course. I didn't play much golf, but I did play with Parnelli once.
Who won?
Neither of us won. We were too much of a gentleman.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, Christopher Mies is at the moment the man behind the wheel of that Mustang. And he's got a Lamborghini to play with. And through he goes. Nicely done.
Yes, and Christopher Mies is a genuine out-and-out racer. And, I mean, he took a big gamble, if you like, leaving the Audi family to join the Ford program. And it's taking this season for the team to work their way through all the things, and it's such a competitive championship. Everywhere you look, you've got winning brands. So Ford are going to look at this, and I'm sure over the winter time this car will be further refined, and we hope that when it comes back in 25 it will be sitting alongside the quickest and the best.
Yeah, they've also been running a program in World Endurance. At the start of the year, the car seemed to shed the boot lid with propensity, but that's been ironed out, and Christopher Mies goes through. It doesn't improve on that lap, but doesn't need to be doing, just needs to get that car right for pre-qualifying and then qualifying tomorrow.
So into and through turns 1 and 2. As we go back to, is it Valentino? Where has he leapt forward? He's still in 42nd. So we're not seeing anything sensational on the first sector. It's not an improvement from Valentino, but hey ho, we've got a long way to go.
It's a very new kind of circuit, I guess, for Valentino. Certainly not like anything he would have encountered on two wheels, with the proximity of the walls in certain places. He did go to the Isle of Man TT one year, didn't he, for a look, and did a lap round, a slow sort of demonstration lap, and people said, would you like to race here? And he said, not a bit of it, no way.
I have to say I concur with them on that. I mean, it's an amazing racetrack, but it's yeah, it is a but. But has he not raced on motorcycles in Macau?
I don't think he ever did, because that's more of again a road race than a MotoGP.
I know, but I just wonder in his heyday, was he ever attracted to go out to Macau and compete? Because it is a big challenge for a car, but it's a massive challenge for a motorcycle.
Well, right now, Valentino is playing himself in. The last lap was slightly quicker. It sort of came good in the last sector, so there's the confidence, really, and then he can push.
Just watching him come through the sequences through 8, 9, not getting as close to the walls as we're seeing some other competitors do. And again, down into turn 13, an easy sort of break and a nice gentle entry, slightly banked, which according to the team will be helpful to the BMW. So then he makes his way through 14, 15, and the next sort of big break will be coming into 22, corner 22. Gets it in pretty well there. It's, in fairness, that's looking like he's at the races.
Yeah, true enough. And little by little, the confidence comes, because on this lap he's done a personal best, as you can see, in the first sector. Blasts underneath the hospitality building, down through turns 22, 23, sideways, curb, another personal best, but he'll have squandered just a fraction of time there.
Another experience, another sensation you get racing on a circuit where you've got the barriers right up against the side of the racetrack is a sort of what you might call a speed effect. It sort of takes your body, your mind, your eyes a time to adjust, because you haven't got the big, wide open spaces that we see in so many racetracks these days. So you're in a tunnel and you're rushing down this tunnel, and it's coming at you so quickly. So you have to sit back and think and breathe. And your breathing is a very important element as well, because if you start to breathe heavily, go into hyperventilation, you need to stop, come into the pits and reset yourself.
He's up to 39th, so there was an improvement, but there was also this little moment. Here it is again. Caught it nicely, but just rattling over the curb a touch.
Yes, and those little moments will cause you to lose 2 or 3 tenths, as you see him sitting back looking. And one also, when Valentino started his four-wheel motorsport career, he tended, I felt, to sit slightly over the steering wheel, almost in the way you'd ride a motorcycle. And I think the team have assisted him in getting him to sit slightly further, not in a semi-recline mode. He'll never do that, but instead of that haunched over the steering wheel attitude that he had in his initial outings.
Stop-go penalty of 10 minutes given to the number 12 Aston, which we were discussing a little while ago, the Bart Lismont Hogard car. WRT's Brains Trust studying all of the data. That car we've been looking at of Valentino Rossi, just to complete the picture, shared with Maxime Martin and Raffaele Marciello. Press the button, you can talk to the driver of 46 and explain what needs doing next, or what the sectors are looking like. There's another rapid car, number 25. This is the one that needs gold, not only in the times at the minute, Gio Magnus at the wheel, but in the championship as well. Now, if this car is 6th in class or better, then the Gold Cup title goes the way of the Fanatec Audi. Jim Clark, Paul Leverard, Gilles Magnus, the drivers. So they've got one hand, you could argue, on the Endurance Cup Gold Cup.
Well, Gilles Magnus going through that turn 22 sequence of corners, and it looked, I thought that looked pretty well nailed by the Belgian driver. He continues, I think, to impress you and me, David, on a regular basis, and you wonder what his future is. Where will he want to go, or where will he end up, in the future? But certainly he's got the talent and the natural speed to warrant him making further progress.
He was a very welcome visitor to the Brands Hatch paddock for a round of the British Touring Car Championship earlier on in the year. He is part of Rob Huff's management stable, so come to see how the boss was doing, and I think he enjoyed the racing, having been there the week before in Well Challenged Sprint Cup.
Didn't Rob Huff get a bit duffed up at that event? I know there's 3 touring car rounds per weekend, but I expected Rob to really sort of get up and show the world how he could drive a touring car, but he didn't quite get it done.
He had a couple of wins on reverse grid races, but the car wasn't always willing.
But I'm talking about Brands in particular.
Yeah, the May meeting was all right. The October meeting, he definitely got roughed up, and wrong place, wrong time. It was a tough year all round. But Gilles Magnus has been really impressive, and you're right, every time we see him, he does impress.
Yes, and you just see going through that sort of turn 8, 9 sequence, and that's one of the major parts of this racetrack. It is about commitment, confidence, and having a car with you. And I mean, Magnus right now looks to me that he is at one with his Audi. Personal best in Sector 1, currently still 4th overall. He's just a fraction over half a second behind the time that's set by, well, it was set actually by Maro Engel. It's now Daniel Murad behind the wheel of the 48 Mercedes. So let's see what Magnus can do in Sector 2. He's coming shortly to the end of the Sector 2 section. And it'll click up. Come on, click up. So he's into turn 22.
A little bit down.
Yeah, fractionally down indeed.
Bit of traffic up the road as well. But of course, come the race, John, traffic is going to be quite an important part. So they need to get on and learn about dealing with it now as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, he finds his way through there very easily. The car, the red Audi just pulled over and let him go through. And that was good etiquette again from a car traveling slowly, allowing a car that's clearly on a mission not to be impeded. But it did cost him, I think maybe he lost maybe a 10th or so of a second by getting into that window where there's a small amount of interference aerodynamically from the car that you're running behind. So anyway, he goes across the line. He goes second quick because he did improve from 4th. So that last sector was a personal best. It was only the middle sector that he was compromised in. But overall, had he not been compromised, he might have actually got close to challenging for current fastest lap, which is held by the 48 Mercedes.
They're in super slow-mo. That's turns 1 and 2. You're looking at the car going through. Number 30 BMW. This is the one that won outright at Monza with the extra pit stop put into that race under the regulations. The last endurance round that was a 3-hour event. It's Sam Dehaan at the wheel of the car at the minute that he shares with Ahmad Al-Hati and with Callum Williams.
Jens Klinsmann, isn't it?
Sorry, Jens Klinsmann this weekend. Yes, you're quite right. Sorry.
It was Klinsmann that did that final stint in Monza. And I mean, the result for this 30 BMW, I mean, it came totally unexpectedly, but it was because of the very smart, streetwise strategy that the team implemented, and because of the incidents in the opening lap of that race with safety cars and whatever. No, they'll be full course yellows. You're not allowed to pit under a safety car. Don't go there. Anyway, and they won the race, and it was against all expectation.
And it could well be that clever strategy plays into the team's hands this weekend. There is the regulation of 5 pit stops, but you don't need to change tyres on all of them. You will have to refuel. And some teams are saying might be marginal, you know, to do an hour and 5 minutes on fuel. Others are banking on safety cars helping that situation. Other teams thinking it won't be an issue. But there's no data to go on. This is what makes this race so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, again, chatter in the pit lane. Most teams think they got enough fuel for about a 61-minute stint. Now, if the race runs trouble-free and the track gets quicker and quicker, and this is a high-speed circuit, then fuel usage could tip that 61 minutes into 59 or 58. So that's where teams are going to have to be, and not just teams, but the people that are behind the team looking at all the laptops and computing all the information. So it's going to be a race that will be won on the racetrack, but as in the case of most events these days, it's won by the guys behind the pit wall on their laptop, punching out the numbers.
There's no pit window as such, of course, in Endurance Cup. There are regulations about maximum driving time and the overall maximum that a driver can do. The other thing to bear in mind is the minimum refueling time, and here it's 79 seconds that the refueling hose has to be coupled to the car for. So every time you put fuel in, it's a minimum of 79 seconds. You don't have to refuel at every pit stop, for example, but if you came in with a, I don't know, puncture that needed changing, you probably add some fuel then, because it might save you a little bit of time later on in the race.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that in the past where teams have had an issue. They go off message in terms of what the strategy that they'd originally settled on, and then they have to recompute what they're going to do for the remaining part of the race. Boots and VDS, Mercedes coming into view. Well, that's the 48. The Boots and one, we just got the tail of it. So, yeah, I mean, I love this part of the racetrack. It is real. This is real motor racing.
There's number 30 BMW, Sam Dahan, who was in jolly form yesterday, albeit possibly a little bit nervous about the circuit, but now he's done a good number of laps around here. His confidence will be up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, the one element I think that is going to be critical here will be the capital C confidence.
Yeah.
That across your three drivers, everybody is comfortable with the car. There's no use making the car suit one driver who might like it one particular way. Normally it drives on its nose, and the other two drivers find it very difficult to balance the car. So get all three drivers in which they're comfortable in all circumstances: daylight, dusk, darkness, whether it's hot, cold, or anywhere in between. There's Thomas Drouet. So that car currently in 18th position, which is a little bit further down than I expected. But anyway, that car was quickest overall. I think it was yesterday evening. That was the one car that got under the 20 or the 2-minute, the 122nd lap time.
Yeah, it was a late starter in the session, wasn't it? Because Maxi Goetz was in the pits for a while early on. That's the car of Goetz, Drouet, and the Estonian driver, Ralph Aron. The sister car, number 10, Cesar Gazo, Esteban Muth, and Aurelien Panis, as ever. And the session is heading towards half-time, if you like. We've got 12 minutes to go before we get to the halfway point. Busy racetrack behind Drouet. Some of the drivers, of course, yesterday had the bronze test that, given the fact that the circuit is new to everybody pretty much, it was opened up to the drivers who are graded silver as well. Give them a little bit of extra time. And we also had Valkenhorst's 35 Aston yesterday missing the first test because of a technical issue, and that is the car that hasn't yet done a lap time in this either. They did get out for test 2, but haven't been out in this, so I'm a bit worried. Valkenhorst having a pretty rotten time. 36 has withdrawn and 35 hasn't been out. No,
it's very tough indeed for a team when you get behind the 8 ball and the time's drifting away and you're the one that's not getting track time, and you need to give your drivers every opportunity. So the Ferrari getting a bit of a pressure from behind, and looks how wide he's gone. So that's the problem with turn 22. If you get your braking wrong, you've got no way of holding the car within track limits there.
So Thomas Drouet presses on, dives up the inside of the Ferrari. Nicely done on the run down towards turn 27 into that big braking zone. The nice thing about this, we are seeing there are plenty of places where you can overtake.
Well, I think there are a number of places. I mean, obviously 27 is the obvious place, but again, we've seen from previous events here, it's something that it's easy to defend. Obviously going again down into turn 1 and 2, easy to try and get down the inside into turn 1, but the danger of doing so is that you can overrun on the exit and find yourself going into a part of the sort of no man's land, and then if you run 4 wheels off that, then you get a penalty. So turn 1 and 2, turn 27, I think down into turn 13 also, but because it's a long run down there, you'll find drivers, if they don't want you to pass, they'll make it very awkward. In other words, they'll block.
We understand for that car, 35 Aston, it's an engine sensor issue, has now been fixed. So the Valkenhorst car ought to be able to go back out, or go out. It's done a sort of exploratory lap, but it's been in the pit lane now for the majority of this first 50 minutes that we've had. 32, Sheldon van der Linde on track now for Team WRT. And the South African driver is 27th. You never kind of worry if the BMWs aren't very quick in the opening session because they're always bang up there come the race.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm sort of talking to team members. They go out and do what they do in these sessions. We've seen it over many events earlier this year where the car wasn't necessarily as competitive as we would anticipate, but either by the time they get into qualifying for the event or the event itself, suddenly there's a significant amount of progress has been made. So, I mean, I'm thinking back to Barcelona in qualifying, where this car only qualified, I think it was 13th or 15th for that particular event. I mean, way outside of where we'd normally expect to see Dries van Thor and Charles Verts qualify.
Well, van der Linde goes by 27th in the times. But again, with it being free practice, you're never really sure what you're comparing this against. So this car might be on old tyres and a heavy fuel load against others on new tyres and a low fuel load, for example. Or they might be working on setup, they might be learning the track. Every team has a different run plan.
Yeah, I mean, teams will hold cards close to their chest. They don't want to show their hand too unnecessarily or too quickly. It's frustrating for a driver because the racing driver wants to go fast. And if he knows that there is a lot more performance available but not being given the opportunity to display it, it's a frustration. I remember one time I did a test or racing for a Group C team, and they wanted to do a test on the differences between a very advanced ignition position or a very retarded ignition position. It was boring as you know what, but actually the reality of doing it was with an engine very fully retarded, wouldn't have pulled your leg out of bed. Put it fully advanced, wow, we're back on the races.
Well, van der Linde is not yet at the races, I fear. Down in the first sector of this lap, but worry not about the BMWs because they always come good over the weekend. Same in Macau, day one, for example, on the streets, they were nowhere. Day two, bang, right up at the pointy end. Van der Linde a little bit wide, and that turn 22, the one that really is perhaps the key corner to catching people out.
Just looking at timing and scoring, we've got a Ferrari now in the top three. Alessandro Piaguidi has found a bit of pace. Again, about a quarter of a second away from the 48 Mercedes, but that's the first Ferrari well, it's the only Ferrari in the top 10. Vance under Brill and the sister car is currently in 17th. So again, you'd have thought Ferrari, with the performance we know they've got, I mean, it's what a sensational car that 296 GTB is, but not really showing their hand particularly other than the number 51.
Which is second in the championship as well, and they came oh so close to winning Spa, didn't they? Back for that bizarre hold up in the pit lane. You just couldn't make up.
You couldn't, I mean, for Alessandro Piaguidi, your heart just, it was just, I can't even find the words to express how much he must have been feeling sitting there with a car motionless at the very point you want to get into the actual pit lane itself.
33 sits in the pit road as well at the moment, that being the Tresor Attempto Audi of Rocco Mazzola, Andrea Cola and Pietro Deliguanti. And mechanic doing some work at the front with 66 minutes of the 120 to go. 48, the fastest car in the session, is back in. Number 25 Audi. We were getting excited about Gilles Magnus. Well, Paul Everard has taken it over. He's got even faster. He's up to second now.
Yeah, again, we're seeing this great pace from Audi. So we've got two Audis in the top four. It's Mercedes in overall quickest, and the Ferrari splitting the two Audis in third position. Then a Porsche, good to see a Porsche up in the top six cars. Jules Gonon has managed to get that number 2 Mercedes into the top 6 as well.
There's your Porsche, fifth quickest, Dorian Boccolacci at the wheel of it, former Formula 3 racer, and with a really good pedigree in Carrera Cup France, Porsche Super Cup as well. Dorian Boccolacci has made a good name for himself in single-make Porsche racing, now in multi-mark GT racing in this Schumacher CLRT car that he shares with Laurin Heinrich, another Carrera Cup champion turned GT racer, and Ian Guven, another Carrera Cup champion turned really quick GT racer.
This particular lap isn't going to see any improvement because he hasn't got a green or a purple, and just hugs. Interesting, during the driver briefing yesterday, emphasis made by race director that if you're coming into the pit lane, that demarcation line, you must stay to the left of the line. But if you're on a racing lap, you're allowed to cross that line because you're not actually breaking any rule or regulation.
Pit lane getting a little bit busy, and the sun is starting to dip now, so it's getting a little bit cooler, a little bit, but the natural light just going to start to change a little. Right, how's Boccolacci doing in his first sector here? Porsche looking quite darty as he accelerates now out of turn 10, and way wide in the background was one of the Valkenhorst Astons.
Yeah, I mean, that's a track limit, I would say, potential track limit penalty. So the Porsche looks like it's slightly nervy at the rear end, but it's got speed. Again, not seeing any improvement in terms of he hasn't got a green or a purple, but that car is running really quickly, albeit he hasn't yet found a way to get a green or a purple on this current lap.
25, Paul Everard, Gilles Magnus, Jim Plas Audi. Stop and go penalty for track limit offences. Another Audi way up the curb there as well, so you can see the drivers press on, but even for, in quotes, a street circuit, there are opportunities to abuse track limits. Christopher Haaser is a pretty safe pair of hands when it comes to this lark, and he is in the 4th quickest car at the moment. Ricardo Feller was fastest early on. This is another one that could win the championship. They come here 3rd, having had a good, solid season, just banking points wherever possible.
I love that camera position because you're looking down from the outside. You can see how close the competitors are getting to the barrier there. And then after that's taken the light from your eyes, you get that amazing glimpse of the Red Sea just on the other side of the barrier.
Hauser not going to go any quicker on this lap. This was the car that notionally won the Spa 12 hours because it was ahead at the 12-hour mark and got the points awarded then, so that certainly helped. Talk about race wins in the championship, of course, but you forget that Spa is important in terms of what you score at the 6 and the 12-hour mark as well. And the Aston Martin of Marco Sorensen, Nicky Thiem, Mathieu Drudi that leads the championship didn't just win the race, they got the bonus points, the extra set of points at the 6-hour mark, just as this car did at 12 hours. Right, it's on a slower lap, but it won't be that much slower, and the car is still 4th fastest.
So Arthur Rouget in his Audi has found a bit of pace. He's jumped into 5th position directly behind Christopher Haaser. So now we've got 3 Audis in the top 5.
And a slow 48 Mercedes, Lucas Auer getting out of the way. I think just being a gentleman. Sees the quicker car coming, moves out of the way. It's not going to compromise his lap because it wasn't a quick lap anyway, and he slots back in and will build up his pace.
Assume that actually the 48's just maybe left the pit lane, and he was aware that there's a quicker car coming, so he did the gentlemanly thing and let it get through, so he will then start his lap once he gets up to turn 27.
And Mikael Grenier has taken over treble 7 from Dominic Baumann. As to the top goes Jules Gounon in the Mercedes, and he's the first driver, below 2 minutes.
He is the first driver today.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think that I'm just looking to see what was the quickest lap last night. It was 1:59.4. So we're still a little bit away from the times that were set last evening, when again ambient and track temperatures would have dropped. But first driver here this afternoon to get below that 122nd lap time.
So Jules Gounon then, the first driver of the session to dip below 2 minutes. You're looking at Mikael Grenier that's gone through, still 29 fastest, but Gounon now is 0.254 of a second quicker than anybody else.
I say this with great respect, but we are seeing that Gounon's car had a personal best in Sector 1. It was getting purples in Sector 2 and Sector 3, but it's come off our timing and scoring. I don't know why. So is that a case of a fresh or a new set of tires being fitted to the number 2 Mercedes for Jules Gounon to go on? That's saying as fast as 1:59.839. So the lap seems to stand, but they've somehow or other the 2nd and 3rd sector times, which were purple sector times, have dropped off our timing and scoring screens.
Because he's on his next lap now. So in sector 1, he's done a personal best. He's just done sector 2 now, which is slightly slower.
Yeah.
So that it's the subsequent lap being pieced together. So yeah, the lap's fine. And I think you're probably right. New set of tyres, new set of sticker tyres, Pirelli rubber on the Get Speed Mercedes. And Jules Gounon release had another really miserable weekend in Macau. Pretty disheartened, I think, 2 years in a row. He's not been able to show what he's capable of, so he wants to prove it again here, just to remind people that he's just as good as anybody else, if not better, in the Mercedes. Mikael Grenier likewise. Rapid driver, off the road though.
Yep, that's 4 wheels off, I would suggest. Don't want to be a factor of doom, but I mean, cameras all around the racetrack will see that, and of course in the race director's office there are cameras, and then if there is an issue, it'll be referred down to the stewards, and on it goes.
And there are officials dedicated to the track limits. 32 BMW has got its final warning. That's the Weerts Van Thor van der Linde WRT car.
I wonder which corner they're getting this from. It says final warning, just looking to see 32, again turn 11. That's before you get down to the end of the first sector. So that we see a lot of cars riding the curb and getting all 4 wheels. So that's going to be a bogey corner for everybody. Into turn 1, that's the reverse view of turn 1. Turn 2, the way turn 2, the barrier actually sort of comes back a bit. Because you're coming out of turn 2, the barrier comes to you. Mikael Grenier, what's he going to do in turn 1 and turn 2? Looking well to the right, looking through the corner as best he possibly can. Watch on the, I was going to say watching the outside to see how close he gets as the barrier returns towards the racetrack.
71 Ferrari ready to go back out. That's the car that we saw earlier on in the session. Thomas Neubauer driving. He shares it with Vincent Abril and David Vidales, the former Formula Renault racer. Number 3, this is the Anthony Bartone, James Kell, Yannick Mettler, Mercedes. And we know how good Yannick Mettler is from what we've seen in terms of Endurance Cup and the FIA Motorsport Games over the years. James Kell up from British GT. Now that's turn 11, and that was way up the curb.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a number of cars riding the curb. It's one thing riding it, but getting all 4 wheels off, and that's why a lot of cars are being given. I mean, right now, you're looking at all the track warnings that I can see on our screen. Almost every single one is done on turn 11. Maybe they need to bring the wall right to the very edge of the racetrack. That would stop them having a track limit abuse, I think.
Certainly would. As yet, that lap hasn't been taken off Anthony Bartone, but we'll see whether it is. The Mercedes certainly looking rapid right now, 1 and 2. Through there goes Dan Harper's BMW, the Paul Ricard winner at the start of the year, along with Augusto Farfus and Max Hesse. And of course, they are still in contention for the championship as well. 5th they are coming into this weekend.
Yeah, so they are the second of the BMWs, currently 14th quickest. It's this number 32 that is rounding out the top 10 currently. So BMW are not having maybe the level of pace that maybe they'll find more pace overnight. Certainly in qualifying, which will take place tomorrow before the race gets underway at 5 p.m. local time. So different again conditions, different temperatures.
Another one with a stop go penalty is 163 Lamborghini. That's the car that is shared for the weekend by Franck Pereira, by Marco Mappelli and Jordan Pepper.
Yeah.
Winner at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, currently they are 8th quicker, or the car is 8th quicker. I think it was Marco Mappelli might have set that time much earlier in the session.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right, this is the Bartone Mercedes that we were looking at earlier on. Silver, by the way, in the championship was won at Monza, and therefore the winning team not here, I think, really to prove the championship having already gone. Whoa, dear, oh dear, oh dear, Anthony Bartone way out wide.
Anthony, that was a little bit excessive.
Just to quickly finish off, Silver, Colin Kerasani, Dan Arrow and Tanat Satran-Tirakul, the champion, so that they're not here. Right, back to 26. Kobe Pauwels, former rallycrosser at the wheel of the Santalok Audi. His father was a very successful Belgian rallycrosser as well, and Kobe Pauwels down in sector 1 but up in 2.
And just fastest lap still with the number 2 Mercedes, and Gounon fastest overall sector in sector 2 on that current lap, but didn't make any further progress in the final sector. So again, finding time, maybe a hot lap, slow down lap, get the tyres a little bit, give them a chance to recover.
We're into the second half of the session. I don't think I've ever seen quite so many people being done for speeding in the pit lane. It's an endless list now. It's not just a car at a time either. The last message has 4 cars all listed as having been 0.1 of a kilometre over the limit. And you might say, oh, it's only 0.1, but it's a broken rule.
Yeah, I know. A bit of a bore, but anyway, there we are.
Now, that's how you should take turn 11. 2 wheels were on the racetrack, 2 wheels up
Correct.
the curb.
Maybe part of the reason why people are getting done coming into the pit lane is actually at the point where they enter the pit lane, because they're coming from turn 27, which is maybe about 400 metres before they will enter the pit lane, and they're probably carrying quite a lot of speed. You don't get many pit lane entries that are that far away from the final corner on the lap. So maybe that's a little sort of thought as to where they're just at that slight miscalculation when they come across the demarcation line where the 50-kilometre speed limit will actually become de rigueur.
Right, Kirby Pavel's press is on. This is the car that is 9th fastest at the moment, the Santilot run Audi. Santilot's been another loyal servant of the Four Rings. Lucas Leggeret and Ezequiel Perez Compagne, the other 2 drivers of this car. So again, within the Silver Cup, that should be there or thereabouts, shouldn't it? It's quickest in class at the moment.
Well, I think just as we work our way through this 2-hour practice session, teams are beginning to think about overall pace. They've probably given all 3 drivers the opportunity to get a decent amount of track time. And for those drivers that are maybe, say, of a bronze persuasion, who are not the pro drivers, you made me laugh there that you're looking at your face.
I know what you mean, yes.
I was talking to Mark Lemmer. He's got some drivers who are not up to the level of some of the top pro drivers. And my suggestion was let them go out and do an out lap, 2 or 3 flying laps, come in, sit back for 5 minutes, have a thought, catch your breath, have a chat to your engineer. Don't change the car. Go back out, do 4 or 5 flying laps, come back in, and then that's a part of the way, certainly in my experience, you help yourself by not putting yourself under pressure by trying to go too quickly, too early. And the other mistake that drivers have made or do make in the past, still due to this day, is they chase the racetrack rather than letting the racetrack come to them. And this is, I think, a case in point here in Jeddah, that let the racetrack come to you, because it is dusty. It's a permanent racetrack, but it doesn't have a huge amount of racing on it. So it needs lots of cars to clear a racing line, and even the offline parts of the racetrack, which if they're not cleared will be like driving in marbles.
Well, here's an experienced driver, not of here, but GT cars, mainly Ferraris. Louis Machiels shares with Andrea Bertolini, Berto, and Jeff Machiels, Louis' son, and they can never be discounted from a class win. They're in the Bronze Cup these days.
Didn't Jeff blot his copybook in Barcelona? Didn't he bump into somebody was that Barcelona or was it Monza?
Didn't he biff the Sky Tempest?
It did start. I'm not sure it was Monza or whether it was in Barcelona. Anyway, the car's all been put back together by of course.
No, Barcelona was Dustin Blattner on the Sky Tempest car. I think yes.
No, I'm thinking about the of course.
Yeah, no, Monza. I think you're right. He did have a drama there. But Louis Machiels' dad he's doing all right at the minute, and that car is 39th, I think, in the times. But it's the Bronze Cup that they're chasing here. Another one that we haven't really seen very much of yet, but it's up to 30th, is 991. Jake Dennis, along with Toby Sowery and Darren Lung, who has continued to amaze with the amount of miles he's done in a very short space of time. He's raced this year in the World Endurance Championship, in World Challenge Sprint and Endurance, occasional British GT races, probably Asian Le Mans at the start of the year from memory, and has really taken his racing very, very seriously indeed, and has done a great job. And that car will be one to watch over the course of the 6-hour race as well, just as much as this will, in the hands of the Machiels family and Andrea Bertolini.
Yep. So the green and red, so what's going on the pit wall? Having a little look and see who's timing and scoring is going to tell a story. not a lot been given away. Maybe not a lot happening either.
Slightly concerned Ferrari faces. Only fourth is Alessandro Pierguidi, and the next one is only 19th.
Yeah, I mean, it is not representative. I mean, Pierguidi has just done a fastest sector time on this current lap in Sector 1. Car is still overall fourth quickest, but yeah, as you point out, the next Ferrari is Van Bill, all the way down to 19th. That's a big, big gap.
Julian Andlauer's Rutronic Racing Porsche, the Klaus Graf managed team, former racer himself, and Julian Andlauer 18th fastest right now. This is the car that won the final sprint race in the hands of Sven Müller and Patrick Niederhauser, and they join Julian Andlauer within the Endurance Cup trio.
Yeah, that was a very, well, I mean, that car was outstanding when we went to Manucourt, but unfortunately there was a little incident in the pit lane as unsafe release, for which they got a penalty, and it was a penalty that sort of seemingly was applied after they almost felt that they'd won the race, and it was taken away from them, but they did a brilliant job in Barcelona.
Yeah, it was an overdue win, a well-deserved win. They're chasing up to the line, the Mustang that Ben Barker is behind the wheel of at the moment. Interesting now to see the closing speed of the Porsche, but not able to make a move up at the end of the pit straight. So the Ford stays ahead. Whoop, Ben throws it in, catches the slide, but he's on the limit there.
That certainly would look like a serious lack of grip at the rear of the Mustang, but it's got such good straight line performance that while the Porsche will be arguably quicker everywhere around the racetrack, the difference again, there's horsepower. You can see what it does down the long straight into turn 1 and 2. Now we're going all the way down through these curves. Not as quick as the Porsche, but where are you going to overtake? You have to wait until maybe turn 11 at the exit of 11 to try and launch yourself. And this is turn 11 or turn 10, turn 11 now we're going through. So will he be able to find a way down the inside into turn 13? There's the snap oversteer.
Julian Andlauer watching all of that, and the Rutronic Racing Porsche right up behind the Ford coming through turns 1 and 2. There it is, 96. He's still stuck behind the Mustang.
He couldn't get it done into turn 13, but somebody who's getting it done, Dan Harper, is now the quickest BMW on track up to 9th position. So the young Ulsterman fulfilling all the promise that he displayed in his early Porsche Cup days racing in Great Britain, and then permanent member of the BMW team. BMW factory, not just team.
Yeah, as he was a junior, now fully fledged factory driver, and don't forget that, just thinking about Dan Harper, as Ben Barker is off the road at 22, back on again, but he's still ahead of the Porsche. Dan Harper in the Rover Racing overall categorised car, not with Darren Lung in bronze as he would be in sprint. Following me? Good. Right, Julian Andlauer, still on the back of Ben Barker. This is interesting because you've had a whole lap here of the Porsche not getting past the Ford, and were this the race, there'd be a bit of frustration creeping in.
100%, but it just illustrates the value of straight line performance.
Yeah.
And I mean, Andlauer's decided to bin it, come into the pit lane. I've had enough of that game. Thanks very much. I'll just come in and have a chat to my team and see what we can do to make further improvements in the car. But that'll be something that will occur throughout the 6 hours tomorrow evening. The dynamic Porsche.
It is Yacht Raponge at the wheel. Normally we see him in big grunty cars, either GT4 Chevrolets or more recently GT3 Aston Martin. Porsche a little bit newer to him.
So on board, this is the view looking as this series of curves that lead all the way down to the end of virtually the end of the lap into turn 27. The entry into turn this is the widest part of the racetrack, so lots of options available. And that was a late cut to try and straighten the exit. So he gave, I mean, if it was a car racing, that would have dived down the inside. So now on board, coming past pit lane entry, running down into turns 1 and 2.
31st fastest is the dynamic GT Porsche. Slowest car at the moment, number 12, the Contenders Aston that Nicolas Bart still shown as being behind the wheel of, back out on track after its lengthy stop-go, and trying to get onto terms with the Lion Speed Porsche of Michael Verhagen, Patrick Kolb and Bastien Bus. But right now we're looking at the 55 dynamic car, Yacht Raponge currently behind the wheel, and it's Felici Gialmini, the Clio Cup racer, and Theo Nue as the other drivers of said Porsche. And there, just look at the back, you can see the sticky tape across. That was what I was talking about early on in terms of trying to cover off the glare from the headlights behind. I know these days most drivers have their rear vision through a the camera and the little television. Some still have the mirror just in case, but the glare will still be there.
Yeah. Now, looking at timing and scoring, it's a mass or a sea of yellow. All the way down to 30th car, Jake Dennis. He's the first driver who's got a green sector time, which sort of tells me that teams are now not looking for out-and-out pace or times. What they're looking at is imagining if this is going to be, well, we're not quite, it's coming up to 4:45, so the race tomorrow will be 15 minutes away from beginning. So our team's just taking a gap, a breather, and maybe going to have a last lunge in this 2-hour session before then we get a break before they go out and do their pre-qualifying. A 1-hour pre-qualifying session this evening. I think it starts local time at, it was 7:45, 8 o'clock?
8:15, I think, they hit the track. Okay. Yeah. And then at 10:05 tonight, local time, first race for GT4 cars. So if you're a GT fan, then keep watching.
David will love it. He is in his element, flying solo on GT4.
Well, it's going to be a lively race, that's for sure. To the pit lane comes Yacht Rapinge. In he comes. Talking about championships on the line here, so championships are on the line in GT4, so it really is a proper championship showdown weekend here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We've got 44 minutes of this session to go. We're looking at a replay of the Porsche getting up against the wall.
Kissy, kissy.
Yeah, up against the Tech Pro barrier. Not the concrete, the Tech Pro. But yeah, that's, well, you can't get any closer to the furniture than that.
No, in the back end. And that's arguably the exit of the corner. There's probably a little bit more dust, dirt, whatever. And once you get that, it's just like a big hand comes out and grabs you.
Actually, Darren Lung, BMW, that he shares with Jake Dennis and Toby Sowery. And I think that's Toby at the wheel of the car. Jake Dennis has been rapid, of course, in it. Former Aston racer in the championship. Through go BMWs. That's a WRT, and that's a Rover Racing entry. Who have we got in that? Dan Harper.
Yeah.
998. Quicker in sector 1.
Absolutely. So Dan has got himself into the top. He's now actually 9th in the top 10. And yeah, that's an improvement in sector 1. It's probably a small improvement, but it's all going to count.
Starts to build the lap together. Comes now down to 22. A little bit wide there.
Yeah.
All that speed carried in.
Yeah, but he kept 2 wheels on the racetrack, so at least he won't receive a warning for track limit violations.
And now hustles on down towards turn 27. Still another quick part of the racetrack, and then a heavy break. A bit of traffic up the road, and now you can just start to see how the light's changing. The headlights doing a little bit more of the heavy lifting.
I think Dan Harper's coming into the pits.
Yeah.
Oh, well, second guess there. The reason I thought that was because he didn't take the line, the racing line that you would normally take if you're coming into turn 27. He was in the middle of the road, and he wasn't dithering. He was just getting out of the way and coming into the pits.
And Alessandro Pierguidi's Ferrari in the pit lane that he shares with Davide Rigon, who drove earlier on, and Alessio Rivera, who I don't think we've seen very much of. Now, here's somebody that we can never have too much of, and it's Dennis Lind, who's had to be recategorised to come and join Imperiale Racing this weekend. But Dennis Lind, great character off the circuit, great driver on it. We don't see enough of him.
No, I did say to Dennis, would you like us to turn the hose, the water bars on? Because we remember watching him in Monza, God knows how many years ago now. He was absolutely stellar in the rain. So it did actually rain here, I think, on Monday. It was actually torrential rain, believe it or not. So, I mean, you come to Jeddah, the weather's just gorgeous, just high 20s, low 30s, not too much humidity. It poured, but there we are.
Well, Dennis Lind, as you would anticipate, he's on the money. He's up the curve. It's not a quick-ish lap, this, but he's putting maximum commitment in.
Yeah, he hasn't got a lot of grip at the rear.
No. New to the team, so he's in the brightest pair of green and yellow overalls you can imagine. He's like a walking highlighter pen. And Dennis draws attention to himself for all the right reasons. There he goes. He was a Lamborghini Super Trofeo champion, world final winner, as it was then called, Blancpain GT Series Asia champion a few years back for Lamborghini, factory driver for a year or so. Now back to being freelance and trying to find the drives, but it's hard as a non-manufacturer platinum graded driver to get the drives.
Well, we've got a little improvement from Loic Hartog in the 97 Porsche. It's suddenly found a bit of pace up to 5th, just directly behind the 51 Ferrari. So again, our team is beginning to think of looking what they've got tower-wise to put on something a little bit better. Temperatures will be dropping gradually. Track temperature, it started, I'm just going to look at my notes here, it started, it was 46.3 when we started. It's now down to 38.9. Now that's not a lot, so 6-8 degrees of difference, but the things called tires, those round black things which are fundamental, they don't necessarily always want scorcheroo conditions.
No, indeed. Nor does an AM. There's an AM driver, Gabriel Rindoni for Barwell Motorsport, one of the 2 Barwell Lambos that are here this weekend. And Gabriel Rindoni, who's moved up to GT3 from a successful background in Super Trofeo. He shares with Patrick Kujala and Casper Stevenson. Patrick Kujala absolutely loved this circuit yesterday. I can't begin to repeat how he described it, but suffice to say, he's in love with the place.
He's Finnish.
Yeah, true.
And I mean, they love ice racing, love rally stages in massive forests in the worst weather you can imagine in the wintertime. Spiked snow tires. And yeah, he's, again, one of those personalities and characters that really brighten a paddock.
Yeah, indeed. And he's been a regular Lamborghini driver, had a spell in British GT in a Mercedes for a year or so, but Gabriel Rindoni is at the wheel of the car right now.
Last lap, Hartog gone quicker again. He's gotten ahead of the 51 Ferrari. So whatever they're doing with those Rotronic Porsche, it's certainly got 2 personal bests in those final 2 sectors on that last lap. So that's a big improvement.
And Hartog is in the bronze cup car, he and Dennis Marshall. Marshall's a platinum, Hartog is the silver, and you're allowed 1 bronze, of course, to be in that class, and Dustin Blattner is the bronze. So it's going to be up to Hartog and Marshall to do the heavy lifting.
Ooh, oh, oh. Purple!
And it's for Thomas Drouet in number 9, taking it over then once more from Maxi Götz and putting in the time. What's going on for the Aston? New tyres, what's going on for 48? They've got, sorry, number 2, I should say. Lukas Stoltz at the wheel of it, the other yellow Merc. And Stoltz, taking over from Gounon, is in the car that's fastest in this session. He's also caught up with the traffic.
Yeah, the Audi, again, one of many cars you've seen getting wide coming through the exit of 22. Purple first sector for Drouet, personal best. So this could see the Mercedes. Where are they overall at the minute? That Drouet car, timing and scoring.
8th.
Okay, so this should set leap forward. It's got the good toe from the Audi directly ahead of him. So currently an 8. Let's see whether he improves further. That's across the line now. 3 places up to 5th.
Right, so that means you've got Mercedes, Audi, Porsche, Mercedes, Ferrari. Alessio Rivera is now installed in 51. 7th, Mercedes, 8th Audi, 9th Audi, 10th Audi, 11th Porsche. And 12th is where you find your best BMW, and it's your Dan Harper, Augusto Farfus and Max Assecar. Whoops, 33 skips up the curb at turn 2.
Ooh, brave round the outside.
Yeah, I think the Audi did back out of that, didn't have the pace, so Drouet was a little bit more secure. It was in 33, getting it wrong. He says hunting for the car in the order. It is Rico Mazzola. And that car actually is not doing badly, 16th, number 33 Audi. There's Drouet, 5th as John explained.
So down into turn 13. Runs quite high on the entry, then sticks the nose down, and then again the banking sort of slingshots you out of turn 13. Then you begin the process of the return route back to turn 27. I mean, it is an amazing facility. It's a fantastic racetrack. It's a big challenge to every competitor here, largely because of the maintained speed through all these corners. And one of the issues that when the circuit opened up was that there's no line of sight through many of the corners. So you're committing without knowing, is there anything that shouldn't be there?
Well, we did have a few incidents yesterday, no question, as we've lost one of the Aston Martins, but it wasn't really as destructive as 1 or 2 naysayers feared. 52 Ferrari then to the pit lane.
Is that the one that had the smoky looking turbo? Well, this is the McKeel's, Jeff McKeel's car, yeah. Little
chunks of rubber, I think, being pulled out there.
Yeah, you can see considerably big chunks of rubber.
I thought the smoky one was the Pierre Guidi Rigon Rovera car from early on.
With Jake Dennis on board, the BMW. the 99, so car shared. I mean, what a quality guy Jake Dennis is in terms of, he won Formula E championship in 2022. Gets it spot on coming through turn 10, doesn't override the curb, doesn't get a penalty, and then now the run down to turn 13. Watch how he enters the BMW. It's all very progressive and smooth. A little bit of understeer in the middle. You can see the amount of lock he's having to apply to get the car to turn, and then comes out of turn 13 through 14, uses whatever he's allowed to use, and then you begin this sort of right-left sequence, culminating in the little nasty, tricky entry into turn 22.
Right up against the barrier there, but Jake Dennis
was
leaving nothing on the table, is he? Personal best sector 1, 35th this car is at the minute, but it shouldn't be by the end of the lap.
Yeah, Jake's a pretty cool guy. He had that under control. So this is how you see it from a driver's perspective. Into 22, yeah, that's, he gets away with that one. He's got effectively 2 wheels just about on the tarmac.
But he's down in that middle sector, lost a little bit of time. So let's see whether he can rebuild, and indeed whether the first sector was so good that it doesn't really matter about the middle. Comes down under the gantry now in towards turn 27. Through the left, up towards the safety car line, and he's going to stay out. And the net result of the lap with 2 minutes 1.035 as the best out of that car. Jake Dennis comes towards the line and actually doesn't improve.
But Lorenzo Patrese has improved in his Sky Tempest. His Audi number 88, just trying to get my tongue around all of this, up to 7th position. Again, 3 green sectors. Now, there's no sort of reasons to believe that was purely about Lorenzo's talent. He's got grip, and suddenly that Audi has come alive as the second Audi in the top 7. There's still the 25 Santa Lock Audi that's in 3rd position overall, but a good effort indeed by Lorenzo Patrese.
Well, there is 991. Skips up the curb, Jake Dennis, and he's in the first sector of this next lap. Gets on the lights to warn Sebastian Oegaard of his presence. Goes through the hairpin, and he's dropped a little bit of time, has Jake, in sector 1 of this lap.
He's going to need some assistance if he's going to find a way through, because there is no real opportunity, and to try and make an out-braking maneuver into turn 22, which has been the scene of a lot of the track limit abuse penalties, is not. But he's closer to the. I suspect he's going to have. Yes, he does. A little bit of cooperation, good driving. Look at the dust offline. That's what I was talking about. That's what you've got to be careful of. You get hot tires over that, and just literally sticks to it. And when you get into the next corner, well, fortunately the Aston was slightly slower than the BMW, but there's still a lot of the dust that was online now has sort of been pushed to the extremities of the offline.
Well, Jake Dennis is not going to be an improver on this lap, but it's interesting to see again where the strengths of the BMW are relative to other brands, and indeed where the overtaking is possible, as he comes then now out of turn 27 up towards the line. Sebastian Oegaard's Aston certainly falling away on this lap. The BMW booms past the pits, goes through, and Jake Dennis 2 minutes 1. Actually, it was only a 10th shy of what he'd done earlier on, but the margins are so tight in Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup that he just couldn't improve.
Well, one thing we have seen so far in this session is that the pace of the BMWs here today, the best is Dan Harper in 14th, then you got Charles Fiat in the 32, just 2 places behind. And then you've got to go all the way down to 32nd place, Raffaele Marcello, who used to be the gun driver in the days when he was driving for Mercedes. That car still a long way down. They're still 32nd. And then you've got Jake Dennis, who's 35th. I mean, the driver quality behind the wheel of those 2 cars does not reflect the pace that we're seeing from the right now. Down the inside. He wasn't quite sure if the McLaren was going to show him the opportunity to go through. Anyway, Jake made the decision, and he got cleanly through.
Indeed. The Mustang's struggling a bit, 44th at the minute, but if it's not got this rear end grip, this rear end bite, then that might be partly explaining that. And who else would we be expecting more from? Jens Klingman, number 30 BMW, he's only 39th as well. So again, what are we reading into this? Is everybody on the same setup? Are they all going for a qualifying time? No is the answer. But we are going back to the odd green, aren't we now? We had that lull where John rightly said it was all yellow. In other words, no improvements. Now there are greens and the odd purple coming into the mix.
Yeah, we'd like to see a few more purples. We've got 30 minutes of the session remaining, so we've had an hour and a half to date. Temperatures have begun to generally drop away. The ambience not dropped very much. It's the track temperature that's begun to fall. 35.8 it is presently. So that's a comfortable temperature for the tires. And if you want to go out and maybe do a little run just to see what the potential pace of your car is, maybe it would be a reasonable time to think about doing it.
The McLaren, incidentally, 158 is Mark Sansom at the wheel of it, the Legal Eagle, and he is up to turn 1 in the car that he shares for the weekend with real world race winner, an esports race winner and champion and gold medalist at the Motorsport Games, James Baldwin, and Nikolai Sheargard. And that is a car that runs within the Bronze Cup because of Mark Sansom's driver grading, but that's going to be a good one in bronze, I would have thought.
Yeah, all Garage 59 McLarens are within, well, there's 3 cars with a Ferrari Thomas Neubauer separating them. So the pace of the McLaren is consistent, but it's not sufficiently quick at this point. But again, talking to people in the pit lane, they think that Sector 1 with the McLaren fully dialed in is pretty mega. In fact, they say that's not really a GT car, it's more like a prototype, because it is a full carbon fiber tub. It's the only team car manufacturer that runs a full carbon fiber tub, and it's got all the ingredients to be a super quick car.
Yeah. Raffaele Marciello comes then out of the hairpin. We were being told as we had a lap around the circuit with management the other day that there are 3 mosques surrounding this section of the circuit, and Raffaele Marciello comes now down past one of them on towards the approach to turn 22, and on this lap he has done a personal best within the first sector.
Well, I tell you what, he was trimming the barriers. He came through, I think it was 15. There was nothing left between into 22. Watch as he does. Oh, Raffaele! That's not on the script.
Most definitely is not. Gets away with it. Another personal best in sector 2.
He's so laconic, whatever. He'll just get back into the pits, get maybe a fresher set of rubber, go out and nail it, and it'll be good to watch.
Right, now is this lap going to stand? Nothing has come up on the timing screen to say that by going wide at turn 22 it won't stand. He's heading up towards the timing line now. Marciello tries to improve, and the answer is he does. From 32nd to 15th, big improvement. Marciello 2 minutes 0.5, and that really hauls him up the order. A job well done.
Yes, so that will be some satisfaction both to him and to WRT, who run the car, run the 32 and the 46, as well as the number 30, in fact.
Indeed, yeah, which is still struggling. Only 39, the orange BMW. 63, we've not seen a great deal of, but Matteo Caroli at the wheel of the Lamborghini here is pressing on. And this is the Iron Lynx run car. He was in one of the VSR cars in Macau, but back with Iron Lynx, and Iron Lynx set to go the way of Mercedes next year. Normally
we'd expect to see, is it the 63 or the 163, Mirko Bortolotti. He's not here this weekend. Is Mirko going to another manufacturer?
No, he's just been busy, I think, this year again with DTM rather than multi-driver GT racing. He's driven in WEC in the hypercar program and DTM, so that's where he's sort of been put by management. And others doing the GT3 duties. Matteo Caroli poached from Porsche for Lamborghini's GT program, and the Italian driver coming here out of turn 3.
And he's gone second quickest.
Has indeed. Yep, and that means that he's another driver, and Mauro Engel is a third, below 2 minutes. So the top 3 now, all the right side of the 122nd barrier that we were discussing earlier on, and there are now something like 26 minutes to go of the 2-hour session. Bit of a twitch from Cairoli there, though, in the Lamborghini.
But just watch the body language of these cars, particularly coming through turns 8 and 9, as the 48 Mercedes leaves a bit of spark as it jumps over the curb. Cairoli keen to get ahead of the Aston Martin coming down to turn 13, which he achieves with a little bit of assistance, and it was a pretty easy, straightforward overtake, so probably didn't lose too much time in the process. So the 48, who's behind the wheel of the 48? It's Mauro Engel right now.
Yeah, back behind the wheel, you're quite right. And you've got one of the lower graded drivers there, sandwiched between the two pros and almost being terrorised out of the way. He does the right thing, gets off the line and lets Engel go.
Yes, and again, good driving from the Aston Martin, and don't allow yourself to be pressurized by a pro driver on a track which is unforgiving. Does not, if you get involved in an incident, it's going to be a big one.
We haven't yet touched on it, but just while we're looking at Lamborghinis, and we looked at Barwell number 72 earlier on, we have the British GT champions within the entry, both Ricky and Father Rob Collard, sharing with the man they beat to the crown, Sandy Mitchell.
Yeah.
So just to illustrate the quality of the entry, British GT champions and runner-up on the track.
And Ricky will dazzle us as he always does.
Great little character.
Yeah, he's great fun, good kid.
I haven't yet watched it, but he was telling me about a bit of onboard he's posted on Instagram showing what this lap is like. So if you have time to hunt it out later on, apparently it's worth watching.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're going to show us his new Nashers.
Another of the McLarens. This is Dean McDonald, who was a real star last year, and although perhaps we haven't seen quite as much of him this year up near the pointy end, Dean McDonald is a very, very capable, very underrated GT racer.
I know. I like Dean McDonald. Is he a small guy, physically small guy? He's from Scotland, and he's quick.
Yeah,
he's got all the oranges up and no lemons.
And there is the Manfilter Winwood Racing Mercedes going back to its garage. The car that Mauro Engel has been driving in that last stint.
Just interesting that the body language from Bertolini driving the car now significantly different from the Michael's father and son.
Yeah,
as you'd expect from Andrea Bertolini. I think he was born in Fiorano, or part of the Ferrari empire. Certainly he's been one of the loyalist members of that brand. Oh, goodness knows how many since I was a boy, almost.
Yeah, there's a really good piece that was done in Autosport by Gary Watkins a couple of weeks ago about Andrea Bertolini's career, and he did some karting in his teens, ran out of money. He said, I cried for a week when my father said we couldn't race anymore, so he took a job working for Ferrari, and because he had a bit of money eventually, started racing again and was offered a race in a Porsche. And he went to his boss and said, am I okay to go and race this? And they said, well, if you want to race a Porsche, you've got to take it as holiday. So he took time off work, went to race the Porsche, and eventually became part of the factory test program. Thanks really to a good word put in by Michael Schumacher. And it was with Maserati that he had all the success in FIA GT and FIA GT1 World, and more recently, of course, in Ferraris. But it's a great story, the Bertolini story.
Well, I got to know him when Ferrari engines were installed in A1 GP cars around about 2008, I think it was, and Andrea was a part of the package that was there to look after the Ferrari, the V8 twin turbo engines. Anyway, it led maybe to the demise of A1 GP, but Andrea became a great consul, friend, whatever, and always willing to have a word when you bump into him.
Now this is, again, a bit of a concern. 51, a car fighting for the championship. Alessio Rivera has not done many laps. He's brought it back in, and it's another one with brakes being attended to.
Well, maybe they're just going through a process of bedding in more pads and bedding in the disc. I can't believe anybody's going to need to change discs and pad here, because it's not what I would consider to be a high brake nature circuit. But they've got a new set of discs, a new set of pads, and they're going through the process.
But yeah, but you've had all morning to do this. Why do it in a live session and lose track time unless there's an issue or unless you're practicing a pit stop?
That's your duty. You go and ask them.
Okay, thanks.
No, but you're right. I mean, why would you do it now? But they've gone through a program. They're probably, we've got 20 minutes remaining. They'll be looking forward to pre-qualifying, which will come later in the evening, when it'll be effectively dark here, albeit the amount of light around the racetrack from the illumination, it's you can't call it dark for a driver, but it's not obviously natural sunlight looking down on top of the racetrack. So I suspect that they've done a lot of the hard yards that they wish to fulfill, and it's now doing the final bits of preparation with a new set of discs and pads. I'm assuming that's the case anyway. So still the number 2 Mercedes quickest overall, the Lamborghini 63 second, the 48 Mercedes third, 25 Audi, Jim Pla. Haven't seen much of him so far today. He's behind the wheel of that car. Dennis Marshall in the, no, he's not in the pits. He's, that car is 5th, and the number 9 Mercedes, I can't read it on the screen, we've got a fuzzy timing and scoring screen.
Ralph Aaron
on
6, yeah. So it's looking good for Mercedes, isn't it? But you have got a bit of variety. With Cairoli second, as you mentioned a while ago. Dennis Marshall's Porsche up there. Ferrari 7th as well. And where's your best McLaren? Dean McDonald is 9th. Best Aston Martin, Enrique Chavez, Ross Gunn, David Pittard, 13th. The one that you might sort of wrinkle your nose at are the BMWs.
Yeah.
Guess who's in the quickest one? Well, it's the Rossi Martin Marciello car. We saw Raffaelli do the time. I don't think we've seen Maxime Martin in this session yet, have we?
Well, I've not seen his name up in timing and scoring. I mean, I saw him. He was one of the golfers that came back in from a morning out with the boys, having a bit of fun. Who was the biggest cheat? And each pointed to the other.
And another of the Porsches here. This is Michael Verhagen, who's raced in Porsche Super Cup, the Carrera Cup Benelux, in the Lion Speed GT entry. Right, down the pit lane we look, as there's some refueling going on for the Contiu Aston. And the session with just under 20 minutes to go. Nicky Team is about to be unleashed in number 7. This will be worth watching.
Imagine Nicky Team unleashed around this amazing 6.174 kilometer circuit. That will be, hope we get to get a glimpse of the Dane and see how he goes as we go back to turn 10. So McLaren, I assume that's Dean McDonald, still chasing down one of the slightly slower entrants, so he gets himself up alongside and marginally compromised on that entry into turn 13, but whether it's of any real importance, the car currently 9th in the top 10. Good effort indeed by Dean McDonald.
And the Ferrari is the Rinaldi Racing entry of Felipe Fernandez-Lazer, former Nürburgring 24 winner. So he is now wriggling his way up through 16, 17, 18 is Lazer. And what do we got? 18.5 minutes, give or take, of this session to go. The GT3 cars, as we've been touching on, will be back on track later on, 8:15 local time. And it's approaching 5:15 now. And that's their 1 hour pre-qualifying session. Qualifying is tomorrow. The race is tomorrow. But if for any reason the qualifying session could not be run, they take the times from pre-qualifying. So there is a little bit more importance, perhaps, than the teams used to give it the credence. But 47 cars around this racetrack. It's going to make it busy, that is for sure. More stop-and-go penalties are coming for people for abusing track limits.
Just keep an eye, David, on 63 Cairoli and the 63 Lamborghini. Personal best, Sector 1. Sector 2's down, so maybe it cancels out any gain. So, you know, in what we've got, just 12.5 minutes, 17.5 minutes. What an awful screen we've got. We can barely read the numbers. So 17.5 minutes to go, so it's the sort of last knockings for a lot of teams.
Ben Barker's Mustang being put back into its garage. The Proton competition team for so many years, Proton associated with Porsche, but taking the gamble to go to the Ford this year, and I think they always knew it was going to be a learning season. But that car's really struggled in this session. Ben's had a lot of mileage in it, and he's 44 for the 47, and that doesn't illustrate the real potential or ability of car team drivers, plural.
Maybe a case of you know, some cars will dovetail into this racetrack better than others. Maybe the Mustang isn't one of those cars that's going to really sort of, maybe the characteristic of the car and its size may not necessarily work to its greatest strength. I remember when we saw it at Paul Ricard at the beginning of the season, it thundered down the Mistral straight at a rate of knots. It was almost they got another 100 horsepower than anybody else. It was just so dominant in a straight line. But here it's all about particularly Sector 1, which is a downforce sector. And if you haven't got that level of downforce, then it's going to hurt you. And as the team said, Sector 1, if you've got pace through that, it's the gain is greater than the loss on the other parts of the circuit where straight line performance is going to be key.
Ross Gunn here on a mission as well, 13th in the car that he shares with David Pittard and Enrique Chavez, another car, another Aston that went so well at Spa. Just lost out a little bit on the last round of pit stops, really, but David Pittard, in fact, now shown as being behind the wheel of that car. And a little bit down in the sectors. But that's a good combination of drivers. And it runs within the overall category. There's overall, if you like, then bronze, silver and gold. And it was from the Bronze Cup that we had that history-making win at Monza. The number 30 BMW. Right, what have we got? 15 minutes of the 2 hours to go. Yeah,
Yannick Mettler in the number 3 Get Speed Mercedes. He leapt forward. He got up to 17th, then he's been knocked back by Martin Kehrhofer in the McLaren. So, Nicky team. So Nicky is currently in 30th position, but he's got a personal best in Sector 1, nothing in Sector 2, but let's watch and see what he does in Sector 3.
So he's been unleashed. Pin pulled as you see the Sky Tempesta Racing pit stop unfolding. The car drops down. I think Jonathan Hui has just given way.
That'll be Eddie Cheever, maybe behind the wheel.
Yeah, I think it will be.
First time again we've seen Eddie, I think, this afternoon.
Ferrari specialist, as there is Nicky Team, 13th on his first push lap.
Excellent. Look at the way he attacks the curb. Oh, I'll tell you what, watching the exit, you can see the way the barrier just comes back into the line of exit.
Yeah. Well, this is the championship lead car, remember. Points for the Spa 24 hours win, the CrowdStrike 24 hours of Spa, and the points for being ahead at the 6 hour mark. And a consistent season elsewhere puts this car very much in the reckoning.
This is the bit of the circuit where Nicky Team is going to shine through 6, 7, 8, and 9. Leaps the curb in 10, but it stays within track limits, then through the curve of 11. So waiting for this lap. So he's gonna, whether he's going to get involved with the Mercedes directly ahead. So he's got a purple, sorry, I beg your pardon, a green as a fraction up, a tenth and a bit up. So a tenth and a bit up would take him up probably into the top 10.
Yeah, indeed. But while this is going on, so mirroring it is Matteo Cairoli. He's done a personal best in the first sector, a little bit down in the second, though. And here is Nicky Team heading up towards the end of Sector 2 as he goes past the Red Sea on the right-hand side. And he is coming to the end of the middle sector as he approaches turn 22, which is that real pinch point. The road goes quickly to the right, and then you've got to suddenly jam on the brakes, go left, and he's quicker in Sector 2 as well, but there's traffic up the road.
Yeah, and he stayed within track limits, so nothing going to be lost. He may catch the Mercedes as they come now through the final few curves before you get to the hairpin of 27, but he's carried pace through. He's got green, currently 13th position, so this could see Nicky Team, what does it was again, it's a tenth of a second in both sectors, so he's gained maybe just under 2 tenths in total if you do the rounded out to the figure. So up comes the Dane. What's he going to do into the top 10?
Timing line beckons then. Green, yellow. So he stays, well, he's 13th, stays 13th. It all unraveled in the last sector.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Don't know any obvious reason.
Looked good.
Yeah, I mean, the first 2 sectors were great. So exciting to watch.
Absolutely. And now traffic up the road. The number 48, Daniel Morad, Mercedes.
He's backed off anyway. I think Nicky Team's backed off.
So 007, that traditional Aston Martin marketing number. Even though in the early Fleming books, James Bond drove a Bentley, but let's not spoil a good story. 007 then is on a decent lap, if not an absolute flyer. It
looked like he'd backed off initially, but now it looks like he's sort of picked up his pace yet again. So Lauren Heinrich likewise in his Porsche, currently 15th.
Now that doesn't look good. That's 35. That looks like he's had an awful lot of extinguishment.
That has. Look at the fluid.
Yeah. Now bear in mind, earlier on in the session, that car was sitting in the pit lane for 10, 15 minutes with that engine sensor issue problem, and now it's had a fire by the look of it.
That is not a good sight.
No.
Ooh, who's bumping across the curbs there?
Little Dries van Voort.
Little Dries, and of the golfers this afternoon. Not sure how many GT3 events he'll be competing in next year. He's got his eyes focused on WEC and in IMSA in North America, but no doubt he'll be in for the key events.
Sure. Well, at the moment, he might be back from the golf course, but it's all a bit below par this session. 23rd, he's the 3rd best of the BMWs, or his car is the 3rd of the BMWs.
David, you slipped that in. That was almost so smooth, I couldn't believe it came from you.
Well, as I say, it's not quite doing what he wants. He might be a bit teed off here.
I'll say nothing.
Good. 10 minutes.
No, that was your mulligan, David. That was your mulligan.
Yeah, he needs to find a big chunk of time. BMW's golfing club might well be full of good drivers, but right now, Dries van Thor is up the curb. No bunkers to worry about here, no gravel traps, thankfully.
I think we've flogged that one to death, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm waiting for a different car that I can think about something other than golf. Have a look at the McLaren in the background.
Well, is it a Mark 1 or a Mark 2 you're talking about? I had a Mark 1, was great.
Dries van Thor's lap here is not, as you can see from the graphic, doing a huge amount. He is not being able to go much faster, and there's traffic up the road that's going to spoil it further on, and he bails, comes into the pit lane.
Yeah. Way down on 37th place, but an improvement is Patrick Kujola in the 72 Lamborghini. I mean, it's probably not particularly relevant to the overall scheme of things, but it's important to the Barwell Motorsport team because they have got, I think they've got their two, no, they're not 72. And where's the sister car? I can't see that.
Collards are 39th in the other one. Yeah, Patrick Kujola, that was on pole position for the sprint race in Barcelona. Mustang's gone back out, still with Ben Barker at the wheel, and it doesn't look compliant, that car.
No. I have to say, at the moment, I mean, it's not going at race pace anyway. It's there's a lot more work the team have got to do on getting what they think are the mainly mechanical adjustments to make the car work. And if a team decides to put toe out into the rear wheels, you know you've got a fundamental problem with the car turning. And instead of having your rear wheels would be in the trade called towing in, so the leading edge of the wheel would be actually slightly further in than the trailing edge. Toe out puts the leading wheel out and the rear of the wheel in, so it's a trick to try and make a car turn.
This is now Daniel Morad at the wheel of number 48 with that little witness mark on the right front corner after yesterday's excursion when Lucas Auer was at the wheel, and with around about 6 minutes to go into the pit lane, he comes. The last improver I think you mentioned was Laurin Heinrich in 15th in number 22 Porsche. There's going to be either a practice pit stop or a full driver change here. Lucas Auer, by the look of it, ready to jump on board, but it may well be that the team elects to go through the practice pit stop but not rejoin the session. We'll see.
Yeah, so it's all very leisurely.
Yeah.
So out gets Lucas Auer. I think it is Lucas Auer getting out.
I thought that was Daniel Morad getting out.
Maybe it could be, yes. Anyway, we've got, I mean, it's all, there's no real pressure because you've got 72 seconds or 79 seconds for a race pit stop.
79 for the refueling.
Okay,
yeah,
I mean,
so you've got that on your
you
side.
get a driver out, you get a driver in, and the belts and all the bits and pieces attached well within that time.
And for team, Nicky Team sits in the pit lane. Slightly quirky session that. The car has been up and down the order. It was out late because they had that brake pit stop very early.
But just looking at the rear, the left rear brake, the disc caliper, I don't know why they are. So James Jakes and there's Aston Martin in 46th position. Aston 46th and 47th, which is disappointing for Come To You Racing. Again, having another toughish weekend with the incident yesterday where one car was too severely damaged. Luckily they had a spare with them, so they just transferred the spare into the 22, and that's what we got.
Yeah, James has come back to racing this year after a few seasons away. Very good single-seater racer a few years back, raced both in Europe and in the States, but I think he's found it tougher coming into GT3, and he's got his head down and chipped away and learned the art of GT racing. It's been a bit tougher than he expected, maybe.
Oh, I think it's, you're going into the most competitive GT3 series in the world, and there are some outstanding drivers, and if you're used to driving a high downforce single-seater and you jump into a heavier GT3 car with less grip, less aero on it, it's quite a big change.
Just to illustrate how competitive GT3 racing is, picking up on John's point, we've got two pairs of drivers, 32nd and 33rd, and then a bit lower down for 38th and 39th. Those pairs tied on time to the 1,000th. So you've got Felipe Fernandez's Ferrari and Cesar Gazzo's Mercedes tied on time. And then a bit lower down, Felici Giamini and which of the two are Collards, we're not being told, also tied on times. So to the 1,000th, that's how competitive it can be. You've got two pairs on an identical time per pair.
Lauren Heinrich has clawed his way up to 6th position in this Porsche, the second quickest of the two Porsches. Dustin Blattner's car, the 97 car, not a Dustin Blattner set that time, but they're running now 5th and 6th, so you've got two Porsches in the top 6, along with a Mercedes, a Lamborghini, two Mercedes, and the quickest Audi still at 25.
The clock ticks on down towards the checkered flag to round out the first part of running today. They've got another hour to come. And I know I'm tempting fate, but it was noticeable in the GT4 equivalent session how few incidents we're having.
Yep. I think against all expectations. I think everybody came here with fear and foreboding that the track was going to be a monster and everybody's going to end up in the barriers, and there's going to be carnage, red flags, stoppages, full course yellows, safety cars, and all. And it's been everybody's, I think, respected the circuit, respected the fact that it is a high-speed road circuit where if you get it wrong, it'll be big.
Yeah, true enough. Isaac Tutumlo Lopez comes through 37th in the Grasser Lamborghini, making the run up towards the timing line. Now we're into the final 4.5 minutes of this 2-hour period, which has gone, I was going to say without a hitch. The only hitch was a man-made one. It was that deliberate full course yellow right at the start, just to let the teams and the drivers and the race officials around the circuit experience how it all would fit together. So that wasn't a real full course yellow as such. It was there deliberately, wasn't because of an incident.
Yep.
It's getting a little bit darker. The light's definitely fading. The sun is definitely setting.
So Klaus Bachler in his Porsche up to 18th. So as just under a minute now. So it's all virtually done and dusted, or done and dusk, as you might think, as the sun begins to set, and it drops away pretty quickly. We're looking into the sun, but it's now behind the main pit complex, so the light will be pretty much gone in another 30 minutes.
Yeah, we're on top of the grandstand opposite the pit-in end of the pit lane, and that's where race control is, at pit-in. The start line is midway up the pit straight. The finish line, the timing line, or the control line, if you prefer, is just outside race control. The control line always has to be in front of the timekeeper's window for their telemetry and their information, whereas the start line is always dictated by the length of the pit straight and the relative speed of cars getting to the first corner, for example. This is on board with Eddie Cheever. This is the Sky Tempesta Ferrari, our first real look at the circuit from an on-board perspective.
Yeah, so coming down into the final turn, this is, you might call loosely the back straight, but it's just one very long, gentle curve, and then make your way in. Eddie takes a nice, neat, tidy line, lets the car run out, tries to straighten it up as quickly as possible to get the maximum drive off, and therefore capitalize on any straight line performance that the Ferrari's got.
240, can we get to 250 before turn one? We can. Just then here's the brakes. First gear.
And it's a very tight turn 1 and 2. You can see a couple of stripes already down the side of those Tech Pro barriers as they come back into the circuit. But as you say, David, it's been, I think, a very trouble-free session. We've not seen a stoppage, which is, I think, pretty impressive by everybody.
Absolutely right. That's the car that's second fastest. Loris Spinelli now at the wheel of it, another inveterate Lamborghini Super Trofeo race winner, championship winner, finally getting the break he deserves into GT3 racing on a big scale, and aborts the lap because the session's almost at an end. So keeps a lap in those tyres, even though he did a personal best in the first sector. That is 911, which I think we had Klaus Bachler at the wheel of, and it is, 15th that car, 16th that car.
Yeah. Likewise, Frank Pereira and the 163 Lamborghini, he's made a further improvement up to 13th, so people are still knocking in good laps, and I don't know whether it's because the usual reason is you put on a better set of tyres. Whatever the reasons are, there are a few improvements. Spinelli's pretty been impressive because he got that car up into second place, and he was knocking out a couple of laps ago in a purple sector in the final sector.
a different winner we've had in every round of Endurance Cup this year. Just parked the points for 6 and 12 hours of Spa for a moment, but it's been a different overall winner, including, of course, the Klingman, Al-Hati and Dahan victory from bronze at Monza, which was just the most outstanding race and indeed result. The flag is imminent. We're into the last minute, I think, now of the session as Backler finds one of the Garage 59 McLarens in his path and gets on the lights to say, "Oi, out of the way," and the McLaren obeys. That McLaren is the car of Mark Sansom, so it's the Bronze Cup entry, and Mark, wrong place, wrong time, really. Wasn't doing anything wrong, just that he was going slower than a quick car that encountered him at the wrong part of the racetrack.
Yeah, but he was aware, and he stepped aside, let the Porsche go through. So on a circuit like this, where you've got a number of bronze drivers who are not as experienced as those around, the fact that there's enough spatial awareness to see a quicker car approaching and to be able to give that car space to get through, again, it's good driving from Mark Sampson.
Lots and lots and lots of teams being thrown these stop-go penalties for exceeding track limits, which, okay, stop-go penalty in free practice isn't great because it spoils your run, spoils the program, but if you do it in the race, then it's going to be drive-throughs, it's going to be stop-and-go penalties, and of course, if you get a penalty late in the race and you can't serve it, it becomes a time penalty added on at the end. So the hope would be that all the drivers get this out of their system now rather than in the race. Right, 97 then comes up towards the checkered flag. The flag is out, and 97 is going to be brought to the end of the session by Dustin Blackner, who is the bronze driver in a very competitive car, that the other Rutronic entry. There's the flag. So an interesting session with, I don't think we had a single spin, did we? We had one or two slides, but...
Yeah, but I think everybody's been extremely well behaved, and the fact that there was no stoppages or no full course yellows or whatever else we could have had, it's yeah, a good job by everybody. I think everybody should be very pleased.
So this championship showdown weekend, we'll have the cars back on track at 8:15 for pre-qualifying for an hour, after which there is the 1-hour GT4 race to round out today at the Jeddah Corniche Circuit. The Valentino Rossi, Maxime Martin Raffaele Marciello BMW ends the session. Raffaele Marciello did the time. Valentino Rossi walks away.
So I wonder, when we get into qualifying, not tonight, it'll be tomorrow, how much of what we've seen here in this session is going to have any reflection of what we're going to see in qualifying. Andrea Caldarelli took over the 63. We haven't seen Andrea out in that car either so far today, to my knowledge.
No, I think he just did one lap at the very end of the session.
That's literally just jumped in and done a final outlap, but that's whatever.
Maybe he did more laps in the tests yesterday, so he sort of did his mileage then, and then passes the car over to the others to let them gain in confidence. That, I think, is 78, isn't it? The Collard Mitchell Lamborghini.
Yep. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Glorious.
Absolutely. And a glorious sight as well if you're called Stoltz, Gunnar or Schiller, because you're at the top of the times by, not an Aston Martin, but still by 0.007 of a second from Spinelli, Caldarelli and Matteo Cairoli, who did the time against Jules Gounon's time. Third, Lucas Auer, Daniel Morad and Mauro Engel. From the top gold, Jim Pla, Paul Everard and Gilles Magnus. Fifth, the top bronze, Dustin Blackner, Dennis Marshall and Loic Hertog. Sixth, Ian Guven, who I don't think we saw much of in that car, but we did see Laurin Heinrich and Dorian Boccolacci. Go down to 19th and you find the top silver, Kobe Palbles, Lucas Legeret and Ezekiel Perez Companc for Santalot Racing. And out of the 47 cars, some with a little issue or two, such as number 35 Aston Martin, others, but again, hard to know what program the teams were running to, but there's an awful lot more that we're going to find when the wicks turn up a little bit when we get to that pre-qualifying hour. And at 8:15, it's going to have a totally different feel. It'll be cooler and it'll be darker as well, and the track will take on a different feel under the floodlights. Slowest car, the Aston of Nicolas Bart, Sébastien Hogard and Mathis Lismont. But one car that was worrying us was Lorcan Hannafin's number 35 Aston. Antonio Rankin has caught up with Lorcan to find out what that fire was all about.
Lorcan, from where we stood, that looked quite scary. Can you talk us through what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was sat in just watching the TV coverage and then saw a bit of a commotion, so run out to the front and thankful to the marshals and the team to put the fire out. But we had a bit of a fuel issue yesterday, and then it seemed like it's come back again today, but we're lucky it happened in the box. We was able to extinguish it quickly.
Given that it's a recurring issue, do you think you'll be able to make a quick fix ready for the race?
I'm not sure about the maybe pre-quali, definitely not. But I think it's a bit of a mess. But the race we'll wait and see. The team are fantastic at Walkenhurst Motorsports, so we'll wait and see.
Best of luck. Thank you very much.
Fingers crossed then for Lorcan Hannafin, who was a very rapid Ginetta Junior racer in the UK and then Carrera Cup driver both in the UK and in the German Championship before coming to what you might call multi-mark GT racing. But yeah, it is a bit of a mess. They've got to get all that extinguishant cleaned off the car as well as sort out the problem that triggered the fire. So there's quite a long job ahead, and I think he's right that pre-qualifying is looking unlikely, given that that is only really about 2.5 hours or so away. So the team will go to work on that car. The SRO technical officials having a look as well. And then the view down the pit straight then. The drivers will be back on track at 8:15 local time for pre-qualifying. Let's have a quick look at the highlights then of that session that began with the cars all pouring out on track. Anthony Bartone was one to keep an eye on in the Mercedes AMG number 3. Also Kobe Powell's for Santalok. He was quick early on and indeed ended the session fastest in the Silver Cup. Santalok Audi doing it just right at turn 11, not too far off the road, one wheel just sitting on the ground. Jake Dennis was up against the Tech Pro barrier in number 991. BMW, the Paradigm car that he shares with Toby Sowry and Darren Lung. And we had also the Machiels and Bertolini Ferrari looking good and getting quicker when Andrea Bertolini took it over. The Ferrari master being able to wring the neck of that car. Ben Barker's Ford Mustang looked a little bit wary at the back and indeed got slightly sideways ahead of the Rutronic Racing Porsche, which was in the hands of Julien Andlauer. We had Yacht Raponge running a little bit wide for Dynamic Motorsport, and we had number 9 of Thomas Drouet looking rapid as well. So a dramatic session for some of the teams on board with the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari, which was also looking for a good lap in bronze in which they lead the championship. So at the end of the session, it was number 2 Mercedes that topped the times, Jules Gounon having done the fastest lap, and we'll see what happens in pre-qualifying. 8:15 local time, the cars are back on track. Join us for that a little bit later in the evening.